The battle for the mind of North America will be fought in the video arena.
Oh, we're live. The final day, the day of judgment. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you guys are doing great. So it's April 17th. The debate's gonna start in a couple of probably 15 minutes from now or 20. I'm just looking at the feeds from now from CPAC, and so far it's been great. So that will be fantastic to see what's going to happen in this debate tonight. Oh, hey Angie, how's it going over there? Hey Angie, how's it going? That's funny because I took my day off just to cover this particular, um, episode of the of the um, of the leaders debate. That's funny because I went to my bank today, and on lunchtime I went to the bank and I was talking about with the cashiers about the debate, and very they're paying attention to what's going on. I met some people last night at the grocery store. They were very upset with the Trudeau Liberals and the NDP as well too. Um, I met some people who are going to vote conservatives. I met some people who are going to vote NDP. That's completely fine. I respect them, which is awesome. So I watched the event. So I watched the debate yesterday, and I was about to record a video about this situation. And I think it would be better off to explain my thoughts about the debate in French. So I have to push the event in French, and there were some glitches, especially with CPAC's feed for some weird reason. But what I gathered was that CPAC was very keen to, because when you go on CPAC, there's an option to watch the feed in either French, English, or the original floor language. I just gonna I'm gonna show you on the screen later on. But basically, what allows me to do is to listen to the debate in French in the floor without any translations, any transcription whatsoever. It's raw in French. So what's found interesting is that the debate was very bland, was very, I would say that I was disappointed with the debate from last night. And I say that oftentimes the debate in French, unfortunately, it's not, unless you live in Quebec, people are not paying attention to that as much. I think that today's debate was going to be the biggie. It's going to be the juicy debate. In terms of who is the winner on that debate, I would say that I personally don't know who is the winner. I would say probably Poliver, but I would say Blanchett is sort of like the winner, because what happens is that although Blanchett doesn't speak English very well and French is his first language, that is what gave him some points. So at least from an attack perspective, he was at least be able to defend himself better than the other candidates. Mark Carney was bad. It's kind of expected. People were attacking right front and center, which is hilarious. Jack Mead, though, is definitely the loser in the game, and I think I posted that on social media post about it, which is kind of hilarious. I give him a medal. I'm just gonna share that real quick. So I'm gonna share that just because I like trolling Jack Meat, right? So basically, this guy here. So I just gave Jack Meat the loser of the day. This is the medal I gave to Jack Meat, the loser. Loser. I don't like that meat, but anyways, I don't know what's gonna happen. Is that my expectation for the debate is that a lot of the points that could not be addressed in French will be addressed in English. Um, the clear winner is, um, I would say, is Blanchett. Just from a language perspective, Polyverse performance I was kind of disappointed. I think he wasn't kicking strong. I think he wasn't like punching his opponents enough. Okay. But one thing we have in common is that everybody was punching Carney. Everybody's punching Carney. Everybody's punching Carney. So I think in this case, I think that the elephant in the room, the common enemy will be Carney as well. I don't expect Jack Mead to be the punching bag anymore, but I think he's going to be the guy who said, "Hey, you enabled Justin Trudeau to do all those things. Get over it. You don't claim to say what you're saying. You seem to be, which is to be this savior of the socialist healthcare system." That's another thing I just realized is that Jack Mead was trying to set himself as the savior of healthcare and anti-Americanism. He is basically saying that Canada's identity should be a socialist communist country with free healthcare, and we should not be like the Americans. That was essentially his whole campaign, his whole argument, which is hilarious because he guy has no clue what he's talking about here, which is amazing. So that was his rationale, was basically saying, no, we have free healthcare, we have to protect healthcare, we have to protect people from evil overlords and big corporations and stuff. 80% of Canadians' economy is based on small business, as you probably know. And so that was his rationale, was to hammer on businesses, hammer on the economy, hammer on free economy, which is just frankly nuts, to my point of view. So the reactions I have on social media were very goes anywhere. I was just going to show this meme here. This is amazing. This is the elbows up people there. I just got that. The elbows up people. So the cat, we got cat, McDonald's, and whatever it is, an iPhone and the world flag. So this is where we're up against. This is a cat. It is a caricature of the elbow, like from the liberal people, I guess. So I think that a lot of the energy in this debate will gravitate towards hitting Carney as much as again. It's just a tool. It's quite frankly a two-party race between the conservatives and the liberals right now. What I found surprisingly is that here in Edmonton, at least, a lot of the support for the liberals are concentrated in just one or two ridings, but anything that is not leaning conservatives are leaning towards the NDP because it's NDP, right? Which I find rather strange because I don't see the NDP to see anything intelligent so far. And quite frankly, the decay of the NDP is directly tied to Jack Mead's performance. I think so far he's in his third campaign so far, and he hasn't won any single campaign so far. So I think he has a bad record of losing campaigns because he is basically Justin Trudeau's little puppet, little servant, if you will. I see here a lot of people in Edmonton. I was talking with some people here in Edmonton as well about the NDP performance, and one of the things I realized is that the performance, the liberals, the left leaning candidates, voters, sorry, are trying to concentrate their vote with the NDP, which is quite strange in Edmonton because everywhere else in Canada, unless you're in BC, most of the most of the left leaning most of the left leaning progressive voters are gravitating towards the liberals so far. So I live in Edmonton, so I can tell you that there's some signs everywhere from the NDP, but I also see people signs from the conservatives as well too. I've seen a lot of uh, I've seen a lot of signs being destroyed by the liberals. Just at one time I saw a sign for the liberals, but but they have a previous sign from the NDP that was destroyed, and I've seen people's conservative signs being destroyed as well too. But not that much as people will think, though. Yeah, Angie, let's see how it goes for tonight. I don't know what is your expectations about it as well too. I sincerely think, Sam, I sincerely I expect anything. I don't expect anything that might go out of the extraordinary. Um, as I mentioned, I was very disappointed from the debate last night. I'll talk about that for a second here. The debate last night was very dull. The uh, the reporters, the moderators were asking very softball questions like Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad, climate change, 51st state, 51st state. That's the only questions that were asking, nothing concrete. They were asking about the price of living, the cost of living to some degree, but nothing that will but nothing that will basically going, but nothing that will, oops, just a second here. Just a second, yeah, but nothing that will indicate something that will cut taxes, anything of that nature. Pierre Poilievre was very strong on cutting taxes and everything in between, and his opponents were saying, "How are you going to find the money? How are you going to find the money?" Basically, cutting foreign aid, foreign aid. At some point of time, he was saying that they're going to evaluate UNDRAP or UNDRA, something like that, the United Nations stuff for Gaza, I believe. And right off the bat, Jagmeet Singh was saying, "You're committing genocide. You're committing genocide." He was talking. He was saying that towards the end, towards the liberals and towards the conservatives. So I think that the liberals, the NDP, are playing this game of "I'm better than you. You're a bad person. You should be ashamed of yourself. Get out of my place." So I think that he deserves the title of big loser in this campaign, which is excellent. So that's what I have today as well too. He was, I think the debate wasn't interesting enough, but was what was very interesting is after the debate, this Trump here when he was asked questions like from 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 the guys from Rebel News saying, "Hey, this guys was asking questions about it," and I'm like, "What?" So that's you can. What I wasn't this I was disappointed with the debate, but I wasn't disappointed with the reactions of the speakers as well too. So I see that the feed hasn't started on CPAC yet. Have they started yet? No, they have not started the feed yet. Usually they're probably going to start probably within 20 minutes from now. So that's what I have my expectations. My expectation for tonight will be softball questions. Softball questions and Orangeman bad and Daniel Smith bad and that kind of garbage. I don't expect tough questions. However, I would expect a higher adrenaline. I would expect people to have a more fiercer reactions towards to get each other. I will see people ripping themselves apart. That's going to be my expectation because they don't have the language barrier anymore, unless you're if Francois Blanchett, which is first language is French, not English. That is the only one that will be, I think, will be irrelevant in this debate. The bloc is only relevant in Quebec, and even that people don't know paying attention in Quebec. I was talking to some people over there. The people I know, barely they're going to vote bloc. They're just going to vote conservative or liberal. Barely they're going to talk about the bloc because they're a bunch of, because it's just a Quebec separatist movement. They don't really care. People are paying attention to their wallets, and their wallets are getting thinner and thinner and thinner, and that's what people paying attention on right now. So let's take a look at this really quick here. So about the debate here, that's going to be held in Radio Canada's headquarters in Montreal, I believe. The moderator is this guy here. I was going to share the screen real quick here. Oh, thanks for joining us. Somebody sent me a chat message here. That's awesome. So the moderator is going to be this guy here. Oops. It's going to be this guy here, Stephen Pinkin. He is working for TVO, TV Ontario, which is a public service, public broadcaster in Ontario, pretty much like CBC, but in Ontario. It's called TV Ontario. Those guys here, TVO. TV Ontario over there, you know, those guys here. So basically Steve works for TV Ontario, right? TV Ontario. So so basically this is going to be one of the moderators, Steve Pelkin. It's presuming to be one of the speakers, one of the moderators tonight. And because he works at a public broadcaster like CBC and Radio Quebec and all those guys, I don't expect his questions to be objective. I will expect softball questions like Orishman bad, Daniel Smith bad, climate change, we're gonna die, and Orishman bad, Orishman bad, Orishman bad, climate change, 51st state, that sort of thing. I don't expect anything objective right now at this point, but that's what the reality of things. Like right now, the debates are getting so dull right now. But today's debate's going to be, this election is going to be very important for folks to go out and vote. So if you're not sure how to vote, like myself, what you can do is to go to Elections Canada, and we're going to go together just to set the record straight how to go and vote. So I'm going to Elections Canada. I think it's elections.ca. So you go to elections.ca, obviously in English. Why is it that the French is first and the English is second? Explain that to me. Okay, thanks. So then the first step is to type your postal code. And so I'm going to fake a postal code here. So I'm going to put something in Montreal. Oh. So this is going to ask you, okay, so this is the writing here, Notre Dame de Grace, Westmount, Quebec. Where should I go? So all the information as to where to go, how to vote is right there. So you have to elections.ca, then you enter the postal code. So should I say that I enter a postal code in Alberta, let's say here, T6K, oops. I'm just faking a postal code, I don't know. I'm just punching random numbers there. Okay, so then they did not recognize the postal code, so you have to enter your address and everything. Maybe if I found another address, maybe this guy here. Oh, Edmonton Southeast. Edmonton Southeast is a quite interesting ride because Amarjeet Sohi is going to be there for the Liberals as well. I was at the south side in Edmonton, and you can see Amarjeet Sohi's stuff and signs everywhere. This guy is paying himself signs on the street from like those gigantic LED screen based screen just for advertise his campaign, which is hilarious. So yes, you go to elections.ca, you go on the website, you punch your postal code, and then you can go up so you can go in there. The vast polling takes place on the dates in there. So all the information is there. It's quite self-explanatory. Yeah, so you can bring your business ID, register to vote. Even in my case, for example, this is my first election here in Alberta, federally at least, not provincially, but at least federally. I didn't know where to vote exactly. I don't know where is my riding, that sort of thing. But even if you're not in your riding, you can still go up in there and show your proper ID documentation, that sort of thing, and they will give you to the right department proper information, and that's quite interesting. What I found very interesting, though, and this is not a fun story. This is something that I found from Kinbexy, actually. Basically, the guys from if you're in southern Alberta, this is what I was referring to voting interference here. Elections Canada is preventing rural voters from accessing voting stations. So basically, what they're trying to do is that because in the cities they're mostly vote Liberal or NDP, then trying to sort of dilute the vote from the countryside. Like if you are in the countryside, you basically have to go to the city in order to vote, which is quite outrageous. So that's how delaying the votes going on. That's how they prevent people from voting. Basically, I think this community here, Champion Alberta. What exactly is that? Champion Alberta. I think it's in Lethbridge. Champion Alberta. Village in Alberta. So if I go under OpenStreet, if I go to OpenStreetMap, for instance, and I go Champion Alberta. What the hell is this? Highway. Oh, so that's like Taber-ish, right? Oh, it's Northwest Lethbridge, High River. Oh, I see. Oh, that's Clarence from Vulcan. Oh, I see. So it's in Lethbridge area, very woke, very liberal area. Champion, that's Highway 23. Okay, just past Vulcan. Okay, that's the spot over here. Okay, I see what they're doing. So in this area, apparently you have to go to the city in order to vote. I don't know what's true. Let's take a look at this. Let's say if I can find something in Champion, Alberta, like a postal code or something. What is the voting place for that location? So I'm going to take the postal code and I'm going to punch that on Elections Alberta's website. Oh, I got 7 people on live. That's good. It's increasing. Please share the live. That would be awesome with your peers. That would be fantastic. Oh, I can't see here. So postal code, city of town. Oh, Carmen Gay Champion. That's Champion. Silsika 146. Oh, Vulcan. So Champion here and 135 Main Street. So 135 Main Street. That's the city hall. So this is public information, by the way. and Champion. Main Street, 135. Oh, isn't that funny? I just enter the address from City Hall here, right? So this is the address I'm looking right now, 135 Main Street here. And this is exactly what I'm punching on Elections Canada's website here. So I enter the postal code. Maybe the postal code is not correct. Let me take a look at Canada Post. I'm just doing some fact checking here, just for the fun of it. Canada Post, find a postal code. Come on, honey. 135 Main Street in Champion. Maybe it's not called Champion. Maybe it's something else. Let's go. And we use another city instead? So if I go and take Carmen Gay, is that really Champion? I'm thinking it's not even Champion. Hold on. Contact numbers. I'm doing some research here. So if I go on their website, I just want to see their phone numbers there. So contacts. Website's kind of slow here. I don't know. So if I go in here and I punch their phone number 43897, and I go to local calling guide, maybe the town's not called Champion. That's what I'm trying to check. So if I punch 43, what's the NPA? The area code 43897. Oh yeah, it's called Champion. Oh, okay. Well, it seems to be that there is a problem trying to get the voting location if you're in Champion, Alberta. So what Ken Baxi was saying is apparently true based on the testing that I've done. So yeah, it's vote dilution. It's how, and because they're so close to Lethbridge, then it means that they're going to dilute the vote with the urban voters, which are in Lethbridge, especially Lethbridge West, where the university is apparently. And if you ever go to Lethbridge, for instance, you're going to see a lot of posters like, "Do not touch my pension, CP, UCP. Do not touch my CPC, my CPP," and that sort of crap. So it's going to be interesting what's going to happen in that location. But if they're doing that in southern Alberta, what's going to happen for other countries as well too? As far as I'm concerned, this is the only location that is apparently affected by this situation there, which is very interesting. But yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame that that Elections Canada is doing the little tricks and the little nonsense just to prevent people from voting, which seems like what's actually happening right now. Okay, are they starting the feed on CPAC? On CPAC, not yet. Just be mindful, this feed starts supposedly at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 7 p.m. local time in Eastern Canada, which is quite interesting. Oh, there is Smith sharing the stream there. So this is the interviewer over there, Steve Palkin. This is the guy who's going to be with us. It's going to be sharing. It's going to interview the other speakers. Fun, interesting dude, by the way. Jordan Peterson was talking about TVO at some point of time, and he was talking that they're left-leaning, but they lean towards the center-leaning. So they're not communist left leaning. They're more like central leaning, which is okay. I was at the that's a funny story. I was at the at the drug at a store here in town, and I was talking with some people over there, and they were asking who's gonna win, and they were saying their Carney is gonna win because of the polls. I've been in Edmonton quite a while because I've been in Edmonton. I believe in Edmonton at the rally here in Edmonton, and I can show you some videos that I gathered here. If I go on Rumble for example here. I'm just gonna show you something about Pierre Poilievre's request here, rally here. If you're not subscribed, what I do is that I share those videos on social media and I add subtitles and I put in there, which is kind of cool. I'm just gonna share the screen here. We were a lot of people of it in Edmonton, and that was like a lot of people. I'm just gonna show you what it looked, what it looked on the ground. Lots of people there. Look at this. I just love the flags over there on the back, the Alberta flags over there. Should I share the audio on this thing? I think I'll do. Just a second. I'm just going to share the video here. So yeah, this is what it looked like over there. That was very interesting to see those people around. That was hot. In fact, you can see they're there, but there was a gentleman there was a gentleman who fell on the ground right in front of me. He was suffocating because he was too hot. Everybody was sweating. It was like we were like probably 100 degrees inside. It was very hot, very sweaty, and I was recording this thing. It was amazing. So I don't trust the polls, to be honest, based on the footage on the ground, what I see on the ground. Don't tell me that the polls are true. I see people on a daily basis. I talk with people on the phone on a daily basis. I don't believe that the Liberals are wrong. But they're kind of discouraged by the polls. So one of the things I do is when I talk to them and say, hey, they're not necessarily true. The polls are not reflecting necessarily what the reality of things. However, what I think is happening right now is that a lot of the conservatives, at least here in the Edmonton area, I don't know about the other sides of the country, our conservatives are very shy. They don't really show themselves very well, unless you're in Nisku or in Druid. Like if you're outside, if you're in the Donut around Edmonton, I believe you might see some like more conservative signs, but if you're in the city, conservatives are very shy, and quite frankly so, because a lot of those people, they have a lot of those NDPers, they sort of think that they can do anything, and they're very aggressive and very nasty. I've seen people's signs being destroyed. That's a fact. But I also seen people getting very violent, especially in the LRT. I got some people who told me that at the LRT, somebody was wearing a Trump hat, and he was tapped. He's at the hospital right now. So very interesting to see what's going on here in Edmonton. So that's the Walkman virus. That is what happens when the Walkman virus kicks in, like Doom. So I just want to see if the feed started yet. It should start in a moment, actually. Because it's CSPAC and sometimes we don't get the information from them. And I know that CPAC's feed crashed yesterday in the middle of it. So I had to restart the feed, quite literally started the feed. So Federal Debate, original language here. Oh, that's funny. You have to go on CPAC, and then you have to click on the language on a separate section of the website, and then the feed will go through. So I think I'm gonna do that. All right, so let's take a look at this. Original language, of course, and I'm going to share the feed from now. Present, share screen, vote.
Time to rest because Singh was doing his work for him.
So what I'm going to do is that I'm
Yeah,
going
I mean,
to
I think that,
be
I think
like
that
on a
Pauly,
little
in my view,
camera
actually
here. I
performed-
will be on the side, and I'm going to react to their insanity, if you will. I want
that didn't mean
I
it.
want to
to
see
what you're saying.
Jack
Like,
Mead
I think that
being
Carney did
absolutely
exactly what he needed to
demolished.
be.
That is what I want.
Calm,
That is what I'm
steady,
aiming for. I
he
want
came
to
across
see
very
Jack
prime
Mead
ministerial
being
and kind of sat in the
absolutely
corner. And I
destroyed
even
tonight.
think the way that they were set
More
up on
so
the
than
stage
Carney.
really worked to his advantage.
Carney
Which
is
was
a
a
clown
random
on its
setup,
own,
to be clear.
but Jack
It
Mead is
ended up,
what
you know, that-
enabled Justin Trudeau from. Okay, what's going on here? Jack Mead is the individual who enabled
bewildering to
the Liberals for 2
prioritize
years straight.
attacking Poilievre
So I
completely
don't
helped,
have
right?
any
And
sympathy
him
for the
focusing
guy.
time on talking about healthcare and issues that just aren't in the ballot box question really.
So what I'm going to
Carney
do is
kinda
I'm going to
just skate
stay
by
on the
and,
feed for now, and
that's what
I
he needed to-
might. Oh, they already have some issues over there. Oh, that's interesting. Hold on a second, they might have some issues. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to restart. There's nothing better than life to have internet problems and technical problems, which is awesome. Original language.
Last night it does not feature tonight. Although
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. So they're trying to kind of preventing people from sharing from CPAC. Oh, that's awesome. I think they're doing it on purpose so other people from social media will not be able to share their stream. How convenient is that? Let me check something. They cannot deter my technical skills. So let's take a look. Share the screen. I'm gonna find another way to share. Oh, now I see. I see what this is amazing. Guys at CPAC are preventing people from sharing their screen from their website, apparently. Oh, it just stopped. Okay. I'm guessing that it has a technical issue over there. But that's surprising they're doing those things, right? Okay, I think I'll do this. Okay, I'm gonna have to share the feed from there from another channel here. Yeah, sometimes CPAC, and this is not the first time I have a problem like this. Sometimes they have issues like this when you're trying to capture their feed, and it's not like capturing the stream properly. I happen to have multiple issues like this before, and I think that should do. There we go. Okay, I think that should do.
that have strongly supported the NDP in recent years.
Okay.
What do you think of the
Sorry
NDP
for that. That
performance,
was
the
a real
Jagmeet Singh
bummer.
performance last night?
Sometimes
I
we
thought it
have
was
to
very
deal with
interesting that he
technical
did
issues
speak
sometimes,
longer
and
going after Pierre Poilievre.
this is how we deal.
And obviously,
Eric
the voters
Grenier,
that he needs
he
back are
is
ones
one
that
of
are
the
supporting
guys
the Liberals.
who
But the problem that for
operates
the Democrats is that, generally speking, Liberals
Canada
and especially New
338
Democrats
with
don't
another
really like
guy.
it when they
I don't
fight.
know
They
his
don't
guy's
really see
name,
each
but
other as the main
he's one of
alternative. I know the
the
parties often
operators
dislike each
of
other
that
quite a bit,
website,
but voters don't really see that. They see Pierre
Canada338.com.
Poilievre, the supporters of the Liberals
I will
and the
say
NDP.
that
You see Pierre
this
Poilievre as the
year I
main
do
problem.
not
So
haven't
Jagmeet Singh
seen
spending the evening going after Mark
during
Carney,
a
a lot
federal
of these voters
election. I
might be like,
usually
whoa,
tend
your
to
priorities aren't
see
set. Like, we
the
need to
polls
defeat
every day,
Poilievre.
but
So I
in
think going
this
after
federal
the
election,
Conservatives
I
is a way
haven't
to signal to
seen
progressive voters
the
that
polls
we
at
also
all,
oppose Pierre
like
Poilievre and we
zero,
can stand
none.
up to him and that kind of thing. But it does require those voters to make that choice that they want to not vote the
So yeah,
support
it's a
the
chain.
party that they're currently
It's a
supporting
chain.
in order to support the
It's a
NDP.
chain. So I don't see their polls at all. I don't see their polls at all. They're being very abrasive, and yeah, they're. I think the possibility, and you're talking about federal interference and political interference. That is the case with the debate right now, and the polls is that we have more polling companies that are flooding the market, and these are essentially in. There's a lot of foreign money into those, and it's kind of like a shame that they're pushing the center narrative, which is Orange man bad, Orange man bad, Orange man bad. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to watch the debate myself, and I'm going to react to their insanity and or to whatever comment they might say, and we'll go from there. Thanks for joining, by the way.
Even as a minister, he isn't an attack dog. He has those, and I know they don't like to use this word, but those Trump style or those more aggressive style of being a politician and asking those tough questions. And so I think he's really up against himself. And I think for a lot of voters, particularly women, they're struggling to see leadership they like in him. And so I think, especially building off of last night, tonight is really that test. How does he kind of bring a calmer sense? And I think he tried to last night while still remaining strong, while still remaining authentic to himself, because that'll be really important for voters. And while still holding and trying to go after Mark Carney. Like, that's a tight line to walk.
Mm-hmm. Alex, I see you nodding a lot to what Laura's saying.
Yeah, it does seem like, you know, if this is one of his last chances with the clock ticking on the election to kind of puncture the momentum or the lead that Carney has, you would think that would be an incentive to be more aggressive. But that instinct to be more aggressive, which seems to be part of his political persona for so long, as you say, might also work against him in some ways. So I think it does sound like it is potentially a very fine line or a delicate balance that he might need to strike. It might be like an extremely difficult task. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he kind of tries to stick that landing.
Mm-hmm. You know, I want to get your insight into this, because how he was performing last night was one thing that interested me when I was watching Pierre Poilievre. The other were the policies he was highlighting. You know, Laurie was talking about pipelines earlier on, and I thought, if you're trying to build support in Quebec, who are you actually going for in the province if you're going after these issues? What would you say to that?
I think we've seen from Poilievre that he doesn't really change his message in French. He isn't trying to do something different when he's trying to appeal to Quebecers as he is to the rest of the country, which is in some contrast to what we often see from leaders, particularly from the Conservatives. So he always has said that he goes to Quebec and talks about pipelines. So to him, that's one of his offers, right? And there is support for that, particularly among the kind of voters in Quebec who support the Conservatives. His demeanor that he took on during that debate, I am curious to see if he's going to have the same one tonight, because I think there is a sensibility that in Quebec he's not liked. He's disliked in other parts of the country too, based on the polls, but in Quebec it's especially the case. And their ads that they've had in Quebec are very much trying to go against that, talking about how
Orange man bad.
People say that I bug them or annoy them, and you know, he goes on about that in those ads. But I'm wondering if in English he is going to have more of the style that we've seen from him in the past, or if he is going to keep that style that he had in the French language debate. Was that style tailor-made for Quebecers, Or is it just the style that he's going to have as well when he speaks to English Canadians tonight?
Laurie, what do you say to that?
I think this is the big question. I think a lot of the tone of the debate tonight and what we're going to see for those 2 hours is really about what version of Poilievre shows up. Is it going to be this moderate who is really kind of focusing on why people should vote for the Conservatives and putting that plan out there? Because of course we've heard the kind of conflict inside the Conservative Party about what strategy he should employ, and him holding fast to this approach that he's taken this whole time, even as people's minds have shifted towards something else. So is he going to talk about affordable housing? Is he going to talk about crime? Of course he's going to do all those things, but is he going to use the kind of voice that is again a bit softer, a bit more just kind of letting people hear what he's got to say? Or is he going to decide that the best way for him to do this is go at Carney and just try to bring down people's level of trust in him? And we may see both versions. And I'm kind of wondering too how Carney's going to handle that. I think because of the French fact last night, Carney played it cool, did what he had to do, got out of there. Tonight, we might see Carney try a little bit to get under Poilievre's skin and to make him do that, sort of like get to that point where he's a little bit less controlled, a little bit less moderate. So. Yeah.
No, he's not going to do it. What's going to happen, to be honest, is that he will play again Orangeman bad. Trump's going to kill us, that sort of thing. He is not going to attack Poilievre as basically, the entire campaign from the Liberals is based on the premise that Donald Trump is an evil, disgusting man. That's the whole premise. And the fact that Poilievre is against them, it's kind of a guilt by association. You're essentially declaring Poilievre as your enemy by association.
Needs to change for them this evening. Alex, I'll begin with you.
I mean, last night I thought that maybe the most assertive person or aggressive person on the stage was Jagmeet Singh. Criticizing the moderator about
he's a dumbass,
and going after Carney about Gaza and going after Poilievre
about
things. It'd be interesting to see how he plays it after, especially going after the moderator last night. If that ruffled some feathers the wrong way, potentially. If he tries to dial that back a bit, the Poilievre question is huge. And if Poilievre manages to get under Carney's skin, I think that is a potential, but vice versa as well. Somebody gets under Poilievre's skin and we see him kind of react in a dramatic way. Definitely stuff to watch for him.
Okay, Laura?
Well, I think tonight, the pressure's on Poilievre, and I think that he needs to be exceptional tonight. So will things change? I think if they're looking internally, they know that he needs to put out a top performance. Winning a debate is based on expectations. It's not based on actually who did the best job. And so I think given where the polls are at, Poilievre needs to absolutely perform tonight. And so I'm really interested to see if he'll make some adjustments. I think he will make some adjustments. I think he's a very talented politician. I think it's for him to have two distinctive debate strategies for English and French would come very naturally to him. So I do think we'll see a different strategy, and I think that they need one.
Okay, listen, we're going to continue the conversation. But
that is the same place they've been last night.
Here are the leaders are entering the atrium of the Maison Radio-Canada in Montreal before they actually take the podium to begin the debate. They're going to do their bit of the photo opportunity. So Laurie, as this kind of rolls in front of people at home, just very quickly take a listen. You see there Steve Paikin shaking their hands. He will be moderating.
Tell you.
Well-known journalist in Ontario, anchor with TV Ontario. Laurie, what do you think in terms of changes, potential changes, things you're going to be watching out for this evening?
Well, I think it's certainly a huge moment for Poilievre. I think it's absolutely a make or break moment for Jagmeet Singh. I think he's looking at, I think, a really, really difficult set of losses. And I honestly, at the risk of sounding like a wet blanket, I don't know that there's really anything he can do in this debate that's going to change his fate all that much. I don't think the debates are built that way anymore. These are not the kinds of exchanges that we're going to see, that impassioned, you had an option, sir, kind of moment. These are so highly scripted and so rehearsed. And I think this is just the way things are. This is not just about debates. This is about the way political communication works these days. There is a huge, need to avoid any kind of mistakes. So then that turns into a certain kind of communication. It's going to, it will be interesting to see what happens. I think for Carney, he's in the lead. In some ways, I think it's going to be a real challenge for him, even though, I take what the polls are saying. It'd be very, very unusual, a lot to see a swing in the direction enough that it would change things. But I think he's got to keep this kind of, he's the thing not like the others. He's got to keep the focus on the economic uncertainty, and he is the only one that's going to be able to deal with it.
Eric, what would you say?
Well, last night to me felt like a bit of a status quo debate. Everybody was playing it pretty safe, trying to achieve their very modest goals. Nobody really hit it out of the park there. And that's not going to do it tonight. It'll do it for Mark Carney because he's leading and he's the front runner. But the other leaders do have to do something exceptional. And for Pierre Poilievre, when I think about the debate last night, he kind of faded into the background a little bit. He needs to be much more impose himself on the debate, kind of set the tone a little bit.
Yeah.
He didn't do that last night. He didn't need to do that last night, but he needs to do
that
it
is
tonight.
fairly true.
And
that is
it's
100%
just,
true.
For Mark Carney, a draw is a win for him tonight, and so he
Pierre Poilievre wasn't like
I want to dig a little bit into the
Pierre
numbers.
Poilievre last night wasn't like the guy I was expecting. He was playing very safe. He was not using the other guys as a punching bag. Like, I hope it's going to happen tonight. But I don't think so. But in the French debate, he was very soft. There was a guy in French in Quebec as well who was talking about the whole situation, and he described in a radio station in Quebec that the debate was very it was very bad. It was very dull. Not a lot of meat, if you will.
The odds are always potentially there. We can't say that something spectacular can't happen tonight when it comes to the Conservatives. But in Quebec, you could play it safe because their ceiling was maybe an extra 2 or 3 seats. In the English language debate, it's everything for the Conservatives. They need to not only win a handful of seats, they need to swing 40, 50, 60 seats in Ontario based on where the polls are right now. They need to swing a dozen seats in Columbia. They need to do a lot. And for Pierre Poilievre, the French language debate might have been a good opportunity to shore up the support that he has in Quebec. It's one of the places where they have more support than they did in the last election. But tonight, it really is that he probably can't lose the election tonight, but he can win it tonight. But if he does it, again, it would be the kind of thing that we'll talk about in decades to come. So are we in for that kind of night or not? One of these historic evenings, I guess we'll find out.
See, none of you are going to leave now. See, that might be what we're watching out for here. But, let's break down that a little bit more, though, Eric. Because
it will be a F around find out situation here.
Have the lead in Atlantic Canada right now. Clearly have the lead in Quebec right now. And even in Ontario. So can you talk to us a bit about the numbers that you're tracking there?
Yeah, well, in Ontario, the lead the Liberals have is roughly about 9 points, and we've seen that hold pretty firmly throughout this election. And that is a bigger margin than Trudeau won with in his minority governments, and it's similar to when he won majority government in 2015. The Conservatives need to be leading in Ontario. They need to see a huge swing in Ontario. So if Poilievre could choose one set of voters to talk to tonight, it would be those Ontario voters, primarily in the GTA, where his 2 predecessors were unable to break into. And if Pierre Poilievre fails to do that again, well, that's 3 for 3 when it comes to leaders since Stephen Harper.
Yeah, absolutely. Laurie, what do you think of the challenge in terms of breaking into an Ontario for the Conservatives at this point in the campaign?
This is it. This is the key battleground. I mean, when you look across, in Atlantic Canada, it looked like for a while, Conservatives were really going to benefit from the fact that Atlantic Canada was done with Trudeau. They were angry at the carbon tax. They wanted change.
After Trudeau.
And the Conservatives put up some really strong candidates, but there's only 32 seats in Atlantic Canada combined. Ontario, how in the world could the Conservatives turn this around without making a huge break in Ontario? And they've got more votes than they need in the West. Like, this is a key battleground for them. British Columbia looked like it was going to go more their way, and now it's back into a kind of a toss-up situation, I think. But
With a more, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Eric, with a more efficient vote for the Liberals, even in British Columbia.
Yeah, because in some ways the interior is the Alberta for the Conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I mean,
Except
it's hard to
Edmonton.
see how this will, would go any other way, than Liberal, unless the Conservatives are really able to do something in Ontario. And I have to think, Poilievre's trouble in terms of trying to build support among women must be a significant, drag in terms of him trying to bring his numbers up in Ontario.
That's bullshit. I know a lot of women who want Poilievre in. Why? Because they want to have kids. They want to have an amazing family with their husbands. They can't buy a house. That's a bullshit statement.
But they have a huge margin to overcome the Conservatives among women voters. And, there's not a single woman on the stage tonight.
Yeah, which was noted last night as well. Not a single woman on that stage. Just, we only have about a minute left before I have to throw Alex, Laura, any final words you want to share before we go into the debate?
I mean, just to note that, the clash of the two parties ahead, right? Poilievre and Carney are right beside each other, which in the draw there on the podiums, which is
again randomly,
but that is very interesting. So being staring each other down at close quarters here tonight as it's about to begin is going to be interesting.
Yeah, Laura.
Yeah, I mean, I think this moment's incredibly important for Canadians. One of the most consequential elections of the past several decades. So hopefully they at least give us a bit of a good show, if anything.
Yeah, well, and the very fact that Yves-François Blanchet is there, obviously not as consequential for him as the French language debate was last night. Always interesting to see what they add to it. And again, for me, I gotta say the one thing that I really am going to keep an eye on is that opportunity at the end of the night where each leader can choose a question to whatever leader of the other party they want to. So I think that will provide some interesting fireworks for people who are watching. But listen, Eric Renier, Laura
That'd be awesome.
and Alex Bonical, thank you to you. I know we're done for this evening. Laurie, you're still stuck with me. You're going to stay as the strategist join us later on. But for people at home, thank you. You are watching CPAC, the Cable Public Affairs channel. We're going to bring you now to the atrium of the Maison de Radio-Canada. Again, this is in Montreal, where the English language leaders debate will be taking place, the only English language debate of this 45th general election. I'm Michael Serapio. Here is now the debate. We'll see you right after.
Live from the atrium of Maison Radio-Canada in Montreal, 4 federal leaders.
There he goes.
For your vote. The leaders are here and ready to go. Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, Yves-François Blanchet, and Jagmeet Singh. They will debate the major challenges facing our country, from tariffs to the cost of living, public safety.
Oh, we have more subjects now.
Crisis. Good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Paikin, your moderator for tonight's debate. Each leader has agreed to the following. No notes. Answer the questions. Stay on theme. Stay on time. How much each leader speaks will be counted on these clocks, visible to the leaders and to you at home. This is the
They haven't put immigration, though.
Leaders debate. Well, welcome, leaders. Good to be with you here tonight in Montreal for what I'm sure will be a memorable evening. Our first theme is tariffs and threats to Canada, and we will begin with a round of questions. You will each have a minute to answer, and then we'll go to open debate, and the first question goes to Mr. Carney. Okay, what is the starting point for negotiations, Mr. Carney, with the United States if, as you have stated, our relationship with the U.S. is over as we know it?
Well, first,
No.
Steve, may I thank you and also thank fellow leaders for their service to Canada, people at home for taking the time to watch.
And
I
live
just want
stream.
to underscore the premise to your question, because I think the relationship that we've had with the United States, relationship over the course of almost the last 4 decades, which has been one of steady and increasing integration, has fundamentally changed because the president is looking to fundamentally restructure the trading system. So the starting point has to be one of it has to show that we have control of our own economic destiny, has to have a clear plan here at home to build this economy, to diversify our trading partners with like-minded countries, and also has to have a position of strength in terms of our reaction to the U.S. unjustified tariffs. And that's why we have put in place counter tariffs that have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here at home.
Mr. Poilievre, would you do anything differently?
Well, first of all, thank you, Steve, and thank you to our fellow contestants here today. It's an honor to be here. What would I do different? Well, I'll start by what I would do the same. I think we do need to counter the American tariffs with our own to deter this economic aggression. We must make clear that we will always be sovereign and independent. What would I be doing differently? Well, we need to be in a position of strength. The Liberal government has weakened our economy with anti-energy laws, red tape, and high taxes that have driven $500 billion out of our country into the United States and made us incapable of shipping our resources overseas. That weakness threatens our ability to stand up for ourselves. So what would I do? I would cut taxes, red tape, and approve our resource projects so that we can get our goods to market and bring home the jobs, so we stand up to President Trump from a position of strength.
Mr. Singh, you get the next question. Can we trust the United States to work with us on matters such as Arctic sovereignty and defense policy?
Let's see that one.
I think we've seen, first of all, good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in, and thanks for the question, Steve. We've seen what, for a lot of people, feels like a betrayal when we look at the United States. I grew up in a border town. I grew up in Windsor. And we saw how connected we were as a city and as a community. People lived on one side of the border, worked on the other. People traveled back and forth all the time. We're in the automotive capital of Canada, and we knew how important it was to be able to build cars in Canada. But we saw that those cars went back and forth across the border. Seeing what Donald Trump did to attack Canada in this unprovoked way without any justification really felt like a betrayal. And so Canadians now are right to say, well, we don't really trust Donald Trump at this point, and we can't really have a lot of faith in him. So when it comes to our Arctic sovereignty and our security, we need to make decisions that are in our best interest and no longer be so dependent and so reliant on the U.S. And that's what I would advocate for, making sure we are resilient, independent, and less dependent on the United States.
Monsieur Blanchet, for you, what supports would you want to see for industries affected by tariffs, many, of course, of which are in Quebec?
Many of them. First, be all welcome in Quebec and Montreal. You have me because I try not to speak English in Montreal. However, I think we should never underestimate the threat that Mr. Trump poses on Quebec economy and Canada economy and Mexico economy. But we must acknowledge the fact that the economy of Quebec is built differently. The challenges are not the same. The necessity for Quebec to have at least partly its own voice in the negotiation is important. The difference between Quebec and Canada is very important in terms of economy, but also in terms of identity and language and values and who we are and the way we want to handle immigration. So we have the right to be different, and if this difference is being respected by whoever becomes Prime Minister of Canada, we will be reliable partners in order to achieve the best possible negotiation and protect ourselves and our economies as partners.
Merci, Monsieur Blanchet. Okay, we now move into open debate. And
He hasn't answered the
Mr. Carney
question.
with you, and then we go from there. Do you still support dollar-for-dollar tariffs, even if they ultimately threaten Canadian jobs and businesses?
No, and in fact, we've already moved off from dollar-for-dollar tariffs. We have to recognize, and I think we all do, the United States economy is more than 10 times the size of the Canadian economy. And the principle in terms of our counter tariffs is to have maximum impact in the United States, as I said a moment ago, minimum impact here. So we have to think about the impact on Canadian businesses. I'll give you one example, if I may. In the auto sector, the way we've designed those auto tariffs is that Canadian automakers, if they maintain production here, if they maintain their investments here, when I say Canadian automakers, I mean automakers that have jobs and plants and production in Canada, then they can have lower tariffs on what they ship to the United States. We create a huge
Honda's going to
incentive
leave
for them
Canada.
in order to do that. We also
4,000
have
jobs
carved out
lost.
the Canadian auto parts sector. Last point, I know you're pressed for time. The Canadian auto parts sector, so that it can remain competitive with the United States. We're focused on maximizing Canadian jobs, maximizing the harm in the U.S., so that we get them where we need them.
Mr. Poilievre, you want in, then Mr. Singh.
Well, Mr. Carney, you claim that you want our country to respond with strength, but after the last decade, half of which time you've been Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, our economy is weaker than ever before. It's been the worst growth in the G7. We've lost $500 billion of investment south of the border. You supported blocking pipelines in Canada that gave Donald Trump and the U.S. a near monopoly over our energy. And now you want to keep in place Bill C-69, the liberal no new development law that blocks us from shipping our resources overseas. How could you possibly think it's a good idea to give the Americans a continued monopoly on our energy projects when you have seen how much these liberal policies have weakened our country over the last decade?
Let Mr. Carney respond, and then Mr. Singh.
Sure. So let's go to my record. My record is a month long as Prime Minister. And this goes to the work of coming to the Americans with strength, but doing the right thing for Canada. Within the first week as Prime Minister, I sat down with all the premiers of the provinces and territories, as well as the leaders of the Indigenous people.
Stop lying.
Got an agreement with all the provinces and territories, doesn't happen very often, got an agreement for them to have one Canadian economy instead of 13, first point. Secondly, to commit the federal government to do its part by Canada Day. So free trade in Canada by Canada Day. Thirdly, the federal government to commit with respect to project reviews.
The question was about pipelines.
I'm getting to it. Thirdly, one project, one review, and relying on provincial. Yes, it is possible under our system.
No,
it is the impact assessment. It is agreed on under the impact assessment framework, and we have a cooperation agreement with British Columbia already. We're looking forward to them with the other provinces. We will move forward.
Got to let Mr. Singh's turn, please.
Of course, we agree around having a strategic response to the United States. But what I'm concerned about is what we're doing here in Canada. We are already seeing threats to our country in that just the threats alone of the tariffs have meant Canadians have lost their jobs. The threats of the tariffs that are in place right now, the impact of those tariffs is that we've lost jobs in steel, aluminum, and the auto sector. People are already losing their jobs. And while, Mr. Carney, you had time, as you mentioned, not very long time, but as Prime Minister, you showed us your priorities. The first thing you did is you had traveled, you made a tax cut for millionaires, which was reversing on the capital gains. So you gave a tax cut to millionaires, but you didn't have time to increase the amount that workers get on EI. Right now, workers who are struggling and wondering, what am I going to do if I lose my job? Workers who've lost their job are saying, how do I pay my bills when EI only covers half of a worker's salary? Maybe 40 years ago that would have worked, but right now most workers are spending their entire salary just to pay the bills, to pay their mortgage and their rent, and to put food on the table. So EI is not good enough, and it shows Canadians that you didn't make it a priority to protect those that are impacted by these tariffs, that are threatened because their jobs are lost.
We have not heard from Monsieur Blanchet yet in this segment, so please.
Yeah, Mr. Carney, you are becoming a real Canadian leader, saying one thing in French and another in English. You said in British Columbia in February that you would force oil and gas through pipelines through Quebec, either we wanted it or not. You would use emergency powers in order to do so. And 2 days later in Montreal, you said that you would never do that without the approval of Quebec. What's the point of using emergency powers?
He doesn't want pipelines in this country.
The agreement of Quebec. However, I do agree with you. It's important to be very strong in front of Mr. Trump. However, I would keep the dollar for.
He doesn't want pipelines going through Quebec.
Don't be weak in front of Mr. Trump.
They got more natural gas than Alberta has.
Have to be targeted. You have put out already $2 billion for Ontario auto industry, car industry, and the lumberwood industry in Quebec has already paid to United States $2 billion, and you have not raised one finger in order to help us.
Let's get from Mr. Poilievre and then a response from Mr. Carney.
Well, Mr. Carney refused to answer the question about pipelines. Just the other day, he said that he doesn't necessarily think we need to build pipelines. Let me tell you what that means. Right now, the Americans get 97% of our oil, 100% of our natural gas exports at big discounts. We have to send Canadian oil from Western Canada through the States just to get it back to Quebec because we don't have a pipeline.
It is true.
And now there's this law,
Shame.
liberal law C-69, which effectively bans pipelines. The 14 biggest energy and resource companies say it has to go if we're ever going to build another project. And I asked Mr. Carney why he would keep in place this anti-pipeline law that effectively empowers Donald Trump to have a total monopoly on our single biggest export. Why would you not repeal this liberal law? Isn't it because you are exactly the same in the same line as Justin Trudeau and the rest of the Liberal team that is now making up your cabinet.
Let's get a response.
Well, let me pick up a couple of points that have been made. The first thing I did as Prime Minister was to cut the carbon tax. That's the first thing. Second thing is
you have not cut the carbon tax. No, you'll lose.
All proceeds from our tariffs will go to workers and those companies
about
most
pipelines.
affected.
So just
There were several
postpone.
points
Means
raised.
nothing
And
so
if
far.
I may, if Mr. Steve, if I may address several points raised.
Loser.
All proceeds go to workers and the firms most affected, and those proceeds are considerable. Third thing, I'm interested in solutions. I'm interested in getting energy infrastructure built. That means pipelines. That means carbon capture, storage. That means
And
electricity.
why is that you're
And
building
here's
in the
how you
United
do it.
States?
And we've already moved in the first month. Cooperation agreements with the provinces. Guess what? We are a federation. You need to cooperate with Quebec. You need to cooperate with the provinces. You need to get First Nations and Indigenous people buy-in. You can do that through the one project, one review window that we put in place at that first ministers' meeting, as well as, if necessary, using emergency powers to fulfill the federal responsibility, but not the unique.
Mr. Poilievre, you want to come back on that?
What you're
Kill
saying,
him.
Mr. Carney, with respect,
Finish
is
him.
a total contradiction. The No New Development Law, C-69, guarantees there will not be one-stop shop because it requires the government of Canada to actually duplicate
So
the
what
same,
Mr. Poilievre is saying is that have no rules,
project.
have no regulation,
have one
have no
stop.
Oh, come on.
Mr. Singh, we just got to let him
That's
finish his sentence.
pollute.
Let's just let him finish his
Shut
sentence.
up.
That is not true. In fact, Mr. Singh, the reality is we should have strong rules enforced once. We shouldn't have multiple
It's the first
levels
time
of
I heard you care about
referral
the environment.
that it takes now 17 years to
that your
get a
position?
major project
What a
approved in this
jerk.
country. That is why in the last 10 years we've had the worst economic growth in the entire
Liberals bought a
G7.
pipeline and
We
built a
cannot
pipeline.
afford
They're
a
pretty
fourth
Japanese gonna
liberal
be
term. We
finished
need a
today.
change. And the Conservative plan for change will include repealing the anti-pipeline law so we can get our energy to markets other than the United
Mr.
States.
Singh, then Mr.
Well,
Carney.
while these two compete about who's more pro-pipeline, I think what we need to do is, it's clear. The Liberals bought a pipeline. They built a pipeline. I don't know what Pierre is complaining about. That's what they did. I think what we need to do, if we're talking about energy in our country, we need to build an east-west grid. Let's use our power as a nation to build a national project that creates good jobs, that strengthens us for the future, where we connect
Like a pipeline?
low-cost energy from jurisdictions and provinces across this beautiful land and have low-cost energy for businesses, for people, so we can build a stronger economy. That's the energy of the future that we need.
Mr. Carney.
Three
Pipelines.
quick points. First, the pipeline built, yes, TMX built. That's why oil exports up 50% over the course of the last few years. Secondly,
I don't think that's a bragging point, though.
Mr. Singh is absolutely right about the east-west grid interconnections, which is part of the energy corridor. Huge opportunities for this country. We have to be able to do more than one thing. Third point, fundamental point. We can give ourselves far more than Donald Trump can ever take away. If we have one Canadian economy, not 13, and if we just look at that agreement we got with the provinces, look at what Ontario and Nova Scotia have just announced in terms of their steps towards this, this is within our grasp.
Monsieur Blanchet, what should we be prepared to concede in our negotiations with the United States?
I want to be back to something that Mr. Carney said. You can't do something and the opposite, and you can't fill people's mind with nonsense. Quebec has, by law, its own environmental review institution, and you cannot, through a federal decision, even through a Quebec government decision, go over BAP, as we call it. If the BAP says no,
Just say.
it's no.
I know.
That is
I know.
fundamentally
I know, but
false.
this
Keep that in mind.
This is
No.
the point. This is, if I may, this is the point. The federal government can do the following, which is to take the decision to abide by the decision of the Quebec BAP. That is within the federal government's power. That is known as cooperative federalism. That's what we need to
And
do.
do you
And
understand
this
one
is
other
what-
point
This is
fast?
what we need. If we, I mean,
Quebec,
this is what
Quebec
we need
never
to do.
signed the
in the-
Constitution.
Rev Moïse and then Mr. Poilievre.
Yeah. The building of those pipelines will take at least 10 to 14 years. Mr. Trump will be 90 years old, not president no more.
might-
And somebody,
try.
of course, less terrible will be there before you can even dream of having oil through this pipeline of yours.
We're less than a minute to go. Mr. Poilievre, I promised you next.
Listen, after the last 10 years of Liberals blocking pipelines and killing jobs,
Sounds wild when you
we
say that.
actually
Sounds like-
need
Shut
to get
up.
things
That makes
done.
sense.
We need a change, and our conservative plan for change will repeal the No New Pipelines law. It will create a true one-stop shop, set up shovel-ready zones with pre-permitting so that we can approve LNG liquefaction export plants, mines, pipelines, nuclear plants, and also
said no to that.
hydroelectric dams so that we can generate the power we need to be strong, self-reliant, and stand on our own 2
Can I-
feet for a change.
Last quick word to Mr. Carney.
Okay, quick word. Bringing it back to what we were talking about, which is tariffs, the threats to Canada, how to negotiate. We need these options. We need these options to build domestically, to build one Canadian economy. We need to act. We need to diversify our trade partners.
And that is
will
our
give us
time in this
strength to
segment.
the US.
That is our time. Okay, you know my job tonight. I got to be the heavy guy here every now and then, making sure everybody comes to time. And I'm keeping an eye as well on making sure that everybody gets rough justice over here. That concludes our first section and our first debate. Up next, affordability and the cost of living.
Our goal is to double the pace of housing construction.
It will lower your bills, build homes you can actually afford.
Il faudra parler des entreprises du Québec, des travailleurs du Québec, des aînés du Québec.
A big, powerful bring it home tax cut on work, investment, energy, and home building.
Okay, leaders, same idea, one-on-one questions followed by open debate format. And Mr. Poilievre, you get the first question this time. Many provinces, including some provinces with conservative governments, have ambitious housing targets, none of which have been met. Why do you think your housing plan will be any different?
Let me start by talking to the young people of the nation and those who are aspiring to home ownership.
Like me?
You know, it was only 10 years ago. You could buy an average house for $450,000. But in the last lost Liberal decade, housing costs have doubled, rising faster than in any country in the G7. And so now our youth cannot afford a home, and our seniors are worried about being evicted. Can't afford a fourth Liberal term of rising housing costs. We need a change. And our conservative plan for change will, 1, axe the federal sales tax on new homes. 2, incentivize municipalities to cut their construction taxes to bring houses down in cost by $100,000. 3, sell off federal land for homes. And 4, train up 350,000 young trades workers who can help build those homes. Because you deserve a home, and we're going to make it happen for a change.
Also on the issue of affordability, Mr. Singh, you get the next question. How do you bring down grocery prices in the midst of a trade war?
Oh no, that's gonna be funny.
I appreciate the question. This is a big concern. When I talk to Canadians, they tell me they're really feeling squeezed from the cost of living. That's one of the top things that people tell me about. People are saying, I can't afford to buy groceries.
Because you'll
Every time I
lick
go to the
Trudeau's
grocery
ass,
store,
that's why.
It's just ongoing worry and this feeling of anxiety that can I actually afford the things that my family needs? On top of that, people are worried about the cost of homes. I think those are the two biggest things I hear. So we could do things about this. Other countries have taken concrete steps.
Like?
We can put in a price cap on food essentials.
No.
France has done it. Greece has done it. To great success. It's brought down the cost of food significantly in both those jurisdictions. We can also ban corporate landlords from buying up the affordable homes.
Come
to keep
on.
homes that are affordable. We can make things better for Canadians, but it requires having the courage to take on the powerful corporations that are ripping you off, that are price gouging you. And we know that price gouging is one of the major reasons why food prices are going up.
I run my business. I don't do price gouging.
About the fact that these are the corporations.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. That's time.
Shut
Mr.
up.
Blanchet, I want to ask you about old age security, which will soon cost this country $100 billion annually. We understand you would like to expand it. How would you pay for that?
We would want it to be just for everybody because the Liberals have created the discrimination against elders, which are 65 to 75 years old, having 10% less income from federal government than those who are over 75. But the best way to do it is to have everybody pay its fair share in terms of tax, which means that one should not be entitled to hide money in fiscal paradise in order not to pay him or his clients or friends.
Card is gonna get
not
drilled.
To pay billions of dollars in taxes
25
that
billion.
could be used
Card is
to
gonna
help
get
the
drilled.
situation of others. those are things which are supposed to be applied to everybody. There are a lot of questions to be answered about that. Other ways to do it is to reduce the pressure on housing price, to make sure that the whole budget of elders and families and workers can afford houses which have increased dramatically in
Merci,
price.
Monsieur Blanchet. That's time for this one. Mr. Carney, I want to ask you about housing, which over the past decade has gone from a problem to a crisis while the Liberals were in power. Is your policy on getting homes built any different from your predecessors, and how?
Nope.
This is one of the reasons why I entered this contest, because of the housing crisis, the cost of living crisis, the housing
that
crisis,
you
and the
created
flood crisis to help fix it. And I would look, the housing approach is fundamentally different because we need a fundamentally different approach. We need to build housing at a rate that we haven't seen since the end of the Second World War. We do need a fundamentally different approach. And with the fundamentally different approach, we can build an entirely new industry. So the question is how? Now, Mr. Poilievre and I agree on some things. Okay, I agree as well on reducing the tax on first-time home purchases as a way to buy. But I am focused on increasing the supply of homes and doing that in a way that uses Canadian technology and modular prefabricated housing, that uses Canadian
done by
lumber,
Brookfield,
including in reinforced timber, and uses Canadian workers. And in all respects, we're scaling up to double the rate of home building.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. That's time. We now move to open forum here. And Mr. Singh, you get the first comment. Many of you have pledged to cut the GST on many aspects of buying a home. And Mr. Singh, I want to ask you, would you cut the GST on anything else in order to make life more affordable?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm the only one on this stage that fought to give people a GST holiday. Interestingly, while the GST holiday helps working class folks, middle class folks by taking off the GST off essentials, the Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre voted against that. They oppose the idea of giving people, actual folks that need help, a tax break, and would rather give millionaires a tax break, which shows you whose side he's on, which is not surprising. But what is surprising is that Mr. Carney also said that giving people a break on their GST is a bad idea. Mr. Carney, why do you think giving a tax break to capital gains folks that earn more than $1 million is a good idea, but helping a family afford their groceries, helping people afford their bills for their internet, their cell phone, their home heating, giving them relief to take the GST off those is a bad idea, but giving a tax break to people who really only earn over more than $1.4 million, that's somehow a good idea.
Okay, you went after
that's your numbers.
You went after Mr. Poilievre first, so I'm going to give him the first shot to respond.
Well, Mr. Carney, the reality is that housing costs doubled under the Liberal government, while Justin Trudeau made exactly the same promises that you are now repeating today. He promised that he would double home building. In fact, home building went down. He promised that he'd reduce the cost. In fact, it went up. And here we are. Mark Carney is asking for a fourth Liberal term, repeating the exact same Liberal promises that priced you out of a house. Just a few weeks ago, before the election, the Liberals voted against taking the GST off new homes, and they have continued to build up bureaucracies that block construction. We need a change so that you can afford a home, and our change will be, again, to axe the sales tax on new homes, incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development costs. Train up 350,000 young people who can be in the trades to build those homes and sell off the land that is going to be needed in order to build homes. That is a real plan for you to own a home and afford your life for a change.
Mr. Carney, they're coming at you from both sides. What do you say?
Okay. I know it may be difficult, Mr. Poilievre. You spent years running against Justin Trudeau on the carbon tax, and they're both gone. Okay, they're both gone.
No, they're not gone. They're being postponed. They're still in law.
No, very different.
Stop lying.
A very different person from Justin Trudeau. Focus is on results.
Were you his economic
advisor? And so how to drive results in the housing market, you've got to change the model of building. You've got to increase the financing for housing developers, $25 billion on the table for those housing developers, $10 billion for deeply affordable homes, cutting development charges in half, lowering the cost of the building of those homes by 20%, and lowering the emissions and the run costs of those homes by another 20%. This is how you drive affordability. This is how you bring young people back into the housing market.
You claim to be very different from Mr. Trudeau. Now, the point is to show that you are any better than Mr. Trudeau. You claim to have a lot of experience in many things, and you know things. Last time we had somebody saying that they knew things, it was the senators, and they killed the law that protected supply management because they knew better than us and were elected by nobody, exactly like you are today. You say that you are a great crisis manager. Which one? I heard of nothing. As far as I know, Brexit happened, even if you were against it. You say you are a great negotiator. What have you negotiated but fiscal paradises in Bermudas or Cayman Islands? You have to prove something, and you have to reveal what you own in those companies if you want people to believe you.
Mr. Singh, you wanted to.
Yes, returning to the topic of housing. Now, it's very important. Obviously, we need to build homes that people can afford. Mr. Poilievre had the opportunity to show us what he could do. He was the Minister of Housing under Stephen Harper. And during that time, guess how many homes he built? He built 6 homes during that entire time. This is not something
he's going to unload on Jack Mead for sure.
And this has been confirmed again and again. He wrote 6 homes. That's it. Now, the problem, though, with Mr. Carney is, well, he's laid out a plan. The problem is that when he was the chair of Brookfield Investments, this is a company that made a strategic decision.
Let him go.
To buy up affordable homes in cities like Toronto, where people were paying a decent rent.
You can't buy a house in Toronto.
Kicked out the tenants and jacked up the rents. That is not someone you can trust, sadly, to deal with the housing crisis when Mr. Carney get profit off of it.
We're going to get responses here. Mr. Poilievre first, Mr. Carney second.
Yes, go.
First of all, Mr. Singh,
Shut up, Singh.
The Toronto Star debunked your falsehoods.
It was 6 homes, and
I appreciate neither Liberals or NDP are very good with math, but in that year, the year I was the minister, if I could,
which is great.
The year I was,
Singh, let's let him answer.
In the year I was minister, we had 200,000 homes built, and guess what the average price of a home was at the time? $450,000.
And guess what happened?
And one bedrooms rented out for $900. And that's since that time, housing costs have actually doubled under the Liberals.
They doubled
and now we have Mr. Carney making tens of billions of dollars of spending promises that will ultimately continue to build bureaucracy. We don't need more bureaucracy in Ottawa. We tried that for 10 Liberal years, Mr. Carney. What we need is to build homes in communities. And that means axing taxes on home building and getting the government out of the way so that builders can actually build.
I think,
Mr. Carney, you are on housing. We need a change, and you, sir, are not a change.
I'm going to pick up on, I thought that answer was quite revealing. The first thing is that it's an attitude towards housing that absolutely ignores affordable housing, deeply affordable housing, issues with vulnerable people, ignores the rental market, ignores all other aspects of it. So the 6 are the relevant. Mr. Singh is absolutely right. The 6 are the relevant.
200,000.
The 200,000 are a different part of the housing market. There are many Canadians. There are many Canadians at different income levels. The second thing it reveals is a misunderstanding a misunderstanding.
He's going to play the banker card. I'm better than you.
The government's balance sheet can catalyze enormous private investment. And that is what we need to do to solve the housing crisis. It happens to be what we need to do as a whole to address the economic crisis that's been forced on us by President Trump.
Mr. Blanchet?
Yeah. You have spoken much more than I have, so I won't ask a question. I will make a statement instead. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying that you cannot do what you pretend that you are able to do. We just have no proof so far. I'm saying quite clearly that you cannot be entitled to do it alone. You cannot be entitled to hold all the power in your 2 hands. You cannot go out there and fix things for Canada and Quebec without being seriously checked by serious people. You cannot go out there and speak for Quebec without Quebec having its own strong voice to protect itself and to promote its different economy. So if you want to collaborate, let's say right now that whatever happens, even if minority government happens, you will be a partner with the different Quebec economy and identity, which you have been not interested in for the economic part and not respectful for the identity.
Let me get Mr. Singh in at this point. Can you tell us what's the first thing you would do to make life more affordable for Canadians?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do, and I've laid out some of those things. I think fundamentally, I'm the only person on stage that not only fought for real relief for people in terms of affordability, I'm the only one that fought for pharmacare that actually makes life more affordable by giving people
You've
medication
been
coverage,
licking Trudeau's
dental care
ass for
that gives
2
people
years.
more affordability by letting them access their services if you're a senior and a
If not
kid.
more.
I fought for childcare to make sure people could afford childcare.
Loser.
All measures that Mr. Poilievre voted against, all measures that Mr. Blanchet voted against. So if you want someone that's going to fight for you in Ottawa to actually make life more affordable, you can't entrust all the power to Mr. Carney. He doesn't have a track record of making life more affordable for people, but we do. So vote for a New Democrat, and we'll continue this work to make life more affordable for you, while the Conservatives and the Bloc have voted against those measures to make life affordable, because that's not who they care about. New Democrats are in it for you.
Pierre Poilievre.
The number one expense for families today is taxes, more than they spend on food, clothing, and shelter combined. This after 10 years of Liberal tax increases. We can't afford a fourth term of high Liberal taxes. That's why Conservatives have a plan for change. And that plan
Your plan
includes
voted
cutting
against
your,
every measure to help people.
Oh, shut
income
up.
taxes by 15% for the average worker and seniors, saving a working couple up to $2,000, rewarding hard work again. Because
How much
hard
do you think
work is
childcare costs?
actually
Oh.
being
Dental care
punished.
costs.
He's
Is actually
insufferable.
being punished because of the very high taxes. Now, the Liberals promised 10 years ago they would lower them. They actually raised taxes on 9 out of 10 Canadians. We need a change in this country because your hard work should once again pay off with a powerful paycheck that buys you an affordable food, affordable home,
you want to save
on a
people
safe street,
$2,000,
and that's what we will deliver.
You want to save people $2,000, but cut their dental care,
That's
which
false.
is thousands of dollars.
False.
Cut their child care, which is
False.
thousands of dollars. Cut pharmacare coverage, which is thousands of dollars.
False.
That's not a very good math deal right there. You're gonna save people $2,000, but cost them tens of thousands of dollars. That's why you cannot afford Conservatives, and you certainly can't trust the Liberals
Mark
on their
Carney's
own.
turn.
You need New Democrats.
Mark Carney.
I'm going to reinforce that point, and then I'll respond to Mr. Blanchet. Childcare in this country, $3,000 to $10,000 a year for a family, depending on where you live.
Province,
Okay,
jurisdiction.
Depending on where you live, that's what's being saved there. $800 per trip to the dentist. We've expanded dental
Province,
care to 8
jurisdiction.
million Canadians.
Because we
8
forced-
million Canadians.
because New Democrats are there.
Pharmacare. These are fundamental issues for affordability. We're talking about affordability and taking them off in order.
And that's why you need
to
New
cut
Democrats.
tax.
That's
Quebec
not what I've said.
and
I
in
will be
terms
cutting
of
income taxes
working with Quebec,
for Canadians.
yes, absolutely. Throughout the short time I've been Prime Minister, working directly with the Premier of Quebec, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, our Minister of Finance are from Quebec. Quebec and Quebec issues, whether it's
Why
supply
haven't you answered
management,
Mr.
language,
Legault's letter? He asked 5 things in the letter. He reduced his expectations.
We're talking about
and you did not even answer him. And tonight, you are so much in love with Quebec.
Oh,
Steve, the question that Canadians
good one.
have to ask.
Good one.
Why vote for
Whether-
Conservatives?
why-
We're gonna save
why-
you
why-
$2,000,
He's got
but
the
cost you
Mr.
tens of
Singh.
thousands.
Mr. Singh, sorry, he has the floor. Come on.
The question you have to ask is, after a decade of Liberal promises, can you afford food?
Nope.
Is your housing more affordable than it used to be? What is your cost of living like compared to what it was a decade ago? And are you prepared to elect the same Liberal MPs, the same
No.
Liberal ministers, the same Liberal staffers
No.
all over again for a fourth term? Mr. Carney,
No.
Justin Trudeau's staffers are actually here with you at this debate in Montreal, writing the talking points that you are regurgitating into the microphone. How can you possibly believe
Oh
that
my
you are any more
gosh.
different than the previous
He
10 years
was
of Liberal government?
25 seconds left in this segment. So we're going to
destroyed.
respond to that.
Finish him.
I do my own talking points. Thank you very much. The biggest risk we have to affordability, the biggest risk we have
Is
to this
Donald
economy
Trump.
is Donald Trump. First and foremost, we've got to get that right. Secondly, we need to do it in a way that brings everyone along together. That means preserving
Elbow up.
care, dental care, child care, reinforcing health care, spending our whole
Intrusion,
social safety.
intrusion
The
in
clock is
Quebec
on-
jurisdiction over and again. I like
The
if
clock is
we're
on
any
zero.
better than we are.
The clock
Is
is
there
on zero.
one thing Canadians can do that Quebecers cannot do? You are doing intrusions in our jurisdiction with our money, pretending you are better. And most of the time, you try to copy what we did with our own money against us. What's that as a policy, don't you have your own things to care
Gentlemen,
about?
that really is time for this segment. I wanted to be polite and let everybody finish their points,
I'm
but
far
we
beyond,
got to move
so
on.
I took the liberty.
Thank you. Okay, that ends section 2. Up next, public safety and security.
Steven's good. I like him.
To
I like the
protect
debate.
Canadians and to build communities that are safe, secure, and strong.
Keep crime,
Better than
drugs,
last night, at
stolen
least.
cars, and other illegal substances out of our country.
We're going to invest in our borders, and that means hiring more border officers.
Resources are in short supply, not enough staff. This is not the nice way to treat people who come to our border.
Okay, same format, one-on-one questions and then open debate. Monsieur Blanchet, you get to go first in this one. Public safety and security. For a lot of people, that means the fentanyl crisis. I'd like to know what you could contribute to ending that crisis.
Roxanne
in this
Rhodes
country.
in Quebec, by
The
the way.
fentanyl crisis is a very serious issue, which is a bit less important in Quebec than it is in British Columbia. I think the whole border thing is the real issue. Immigration is a very important issue for Quebecers. Immigration has to be dealt with in an orderly fashion. Our borders are not dealt with in an orderly fashion.
There are no
The rules are
borders
not
in
respected.
Canada.
The rules are unclear. Some rules even invite people to hide for 2 weeks illegally before coming out. Some things has to be done. The situation of one person asking for asylum may take as much as 4 years without us reducing the number in order to deal with them in a human way. The services for every citizen in Quebec are being reduced because we cannot afford the fact that we are receiving much, much more people in Quebec from this specific type of immigration than we can afford, and we cannot teach them French.
That's time, Monsieur Blanchet. We can, of course, return to the immigration issue during open debate should you
We
choose
will.
to. Mr. Carney, question for you. The Liberal gun buyback policy,
Boo.
not considered a success by many people.
No.
Reviving it is in your platform.
Yeah.
Why would it work this time?
Yeah, I think, well, what we've seen with that policy is some success at the commercial level, but not at the individual level, because it hasn't been, in my opinion, it hasn't been organized properly, and it needs to be organized properly. And I've instructed the Minister
Canada
of
Post decided
National,
to turn your
Security
eyes
and
on
Public
you.
Safety in order to do that. So part of this is a different focus of government, a focus on results, a focus on clear milestones in the short term. Let me make a broader point, though, on gun, which is that we have a problem with guns coming over borders, which is why we've tightened our borders. We have an issue, though, with a gun industry that is continually coming up with new forms of assault rifles, mass killing machines. We banned over 2,000 of these. Every single time there has been a vote in the House of Commons on gun control, Mr. Poilievre has voted against it. You can't be tough on crime unless you're tough on guns.
Mr. Poilievre, you could
We
come
have
back on
illegal
that
aliens
the
in
open
this
debate if
country.
you want
That's
to,
why they
but my
causing all
question
this
for you in
chaos.
segment is, Indigenous people are statistically overrepresented in our correction system. Are you concerned that your tough on crime platform will make that
They
worse?
want to frame
I'm
him.
concerned that Indigenous people are disproportionately the victims of crime. I give you the example of a wonderful group of Indigenous people who came under attack in Saskatchewan, and many of them were murdered. Killer was out of jail after 60 prior convictions.
Fuck.
This is the result of 10 years of liberal laws that allow the same offenders to be released dozens and dozens of times, even when it's known they are a danger. We can't risk a fourth liberal term of soft on crime policies. We need a change. And the Conservative plan for change will bring in a 3 strikes you're outlaw. 3 convictions for serious crimes, you go to jail for at least 10 years, maybe for life, no chance of parole or bail. We will bring in life sentences for traffickers of fentanyl, human beings, and guns. And we will secure our borders to keep the illegal
Thank you,
guns
Mr.
out.
Poilievre. That's time. Mr. Singh, your question is about the RCMP, because you've got RCMP reform in your platform. What, in your view, is the problem with the RCMP?
Well, some of the basis for this is the concern that's been raised
We
in
need an
rural
Alberta
communities and
police.
northern communities that there have been some serious concerns about violence or inappropriate use of force when it comes to the execution
an
of
Alberta
duties.
police.
We want to make sure that we've got a top-tier police force that provides security and safety to those communities in a way that's sensitive and understanding of the communities they're serving. I also think what's very important is for Indigenous communities, Indigenous policing. This is an area of deep concern. I think everyone in our country should be safe. You should be able to be safe at home, safe when you go to work, safe if you take public transit, safe for your kids to be able to play in the local playground. And that's something I'm committed to. And the other area that I'm focused on when it comes to public safety is making sure we prevent crime before it happens. And that's why we want to see increased investments in our border security. We saw under the Conservatives, they cut 1,100 border officers.
No, that were the Liberals.
So that
These are the
prevents our
Liberals.
ability to keep our borders safe.
No,
that stops
no,
those
stop
materials.
lying.
That's time. Not sure it was about the RCMP, but maybe we can get back to that during the open debate segment.
But that's not the question.
Which we go to right now. And Mr. Poilievre, you get the first word on this one. And it sort of dovetails on the last answer you gave, which is you have pledged to be the first prime minister in this country to use the notwithstanding clause, setting aside charter rights of, as you call them, multiple murderers. Why do you think that's necessary?
To be clear, I want to uphold the charter rights of Canadians under Section 7 to life, liberty, and security of the person. Right now, that right is violated by multiple murderers who are given discounts. The case in question was a gentleman who went into a mosque and shot dead 6 innocent worshipers. According to this ruling, only one 25-year sentence, meaning he can be out in his 50s. He only serves 4 years for every murder that he carried out. That is outrageous. And I will use the constitutional powers that are created for this purpose to ensure that mass murderers stay in maximum security penitentiary for life. They will only come out in a box. We will also pass tough new laws that prevent repeat offenders from getting out. If you commit 3 offenses under the 3 strikes law I propose, you will not be allowed out of jail until you prove that you are drug-free, that you are behaved perfectly, and that you've learned an employable skill, and you've served a 10-year sentence. We cannot allow liberal crime and chaos to go on terrorizing our communities. What we need is a real plan for change so that we can bring back the safety and the security that Canadians used to take for granted.
Let me get Mr. Carney to respond to that. Do you think that's an appropriate use of the notwithstanding clause of the Charter?
I think that the one of the core responsibilities of the federal government, Prime Minister, is to defend the fundamental rights and liberties of Canadians.
But you have not.
And those fundamental rights and liberties of Canadians.
Don't tell me about the Charter of Rights.
In our Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Don't tell me about that.
He's 43 years old, literally today.
No, shut up. You have no legitimacy here.
So, to override judgments of the Supreme Court of Canada. In fact, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Oh my God, he's such a liar.
To protect Canadians from people like us on the stage.
Of course.
Politicians who may use their power
to
override fundamental rights.
No,
And the
you
issue
did use your
in using
power.
by the
Stop
federal government, I'll
lying.
stop here. Is not where you start.
Oh
and where will
my
you stop?
God, he
Mr.
is.
Poilievre, I should get Mr. Poilievre on that. Is it a slippery
I'm quite
slope if you use it in this
interested
case?
too, I must say, I would be quite interested too, because Mr. Carney said that he didn't want us to use the notwithstanding clause before adopting a law. And yesterday he said that he felt that it was wrong to use the notwithstanding clause after a law is adopted. So if we cannot use it before and we cannot use it after, it means that Mr. Carney believes that we should never use it. But it is very important. And the Ford case made it clear. The Constitution says how it should be used, but never how or what we will do with it, because it's the prerogative of the provinces. So do you want the Supreme Court to overrule another judgment of the same Supreme Court because you don't like it? Because that would be being the hell of a politician as you define them.
Well, let me just start by saying,
Okay,
first of
Mr.
all, yeah, thank you. I just started by saying, let's not let Mr. Poilievre get away with making this ludicrous claim that anyone on this stage thinks that violent crime should get a less severe penalty. Obviously, that is not a special position that he's taking. Everyone agrees that horrible crimes should have horrible sentences. Judges are equipped to do that. So don't let Mr. Poilievre's rhetoric confuse people. Obviously, everyone agrees that if someone does something horrible, they should pay a horrible price for it. There should be appropriate sentence that's put in place by a judge. But what I'm concerned about is all of what Mr. Poilievre is talking about is after the fact. Now, there's heinous things that happen, and there needs to be severe penalties put in place. But we also need to keep communities safe. And that's what my focus is. Well, how do we stop crime before it happens? Much of the violent crime that's committed is committed by illegal handguns and firearms that come across the border. Now, Mr. Poilievre has admitted that as well, that it is illegal handguns and illegal weapons that are used in violent crime. So our plan is, let's stop those illegal weapons getting into our country in the first place. And the way we do that is by having stronger border security officers and having more people on the border. Mr. Pierre Poilievre, when he was in power, the Conservatives, they cut the number of border officers. They reduced the number, weakening our borders.
Keeping an eye on
the liberals.
Let's get back to Mr.
You
Poilievre
held
on
them.
the issue of whether, in using the notwithstanding clause under these circumstances, would be a kind of a slippery slope and encourage politicians to use it more.
No, we will use it to protect the charter rights of law-abiding Canadians. I'm interested in the rights of victims. Mr. Carney seems to be very interested in the rights of criminals. He says that it's dangerous for me to ensure that mass murderers stay behind bars for life. You know what's dangerous? Turning them loose on our streets. I don't think you appreciate, sir, the chaos that is unfolding in communities. In Toronto right now, the police have been forced to tell people to just let the thief steal the car. When they break into the house, just take the keys. Just let them take the keys so that you don't get hurt. People are living in terror in many of our communities precisely because of the catch and release bail law, C-75, which requires judges release the accused at the earliest opportunity under the least onerous conditions. Every single member of your Liberal caucus and your Liberal cabinet voted in favor of this bill, and they are all determined to keep it in place despite constant promises to the contrary. Mr. Carney, Canadians deserve to live in peace and security. That is the right that I'm fighting for a change.
I'm fighting for that as well. And let me be specific about two things that have been raised. The first is with respect to these issues of car theft, home invasion, and I'll use the GTA area where there has been a sharp increase. How do you attack that? You attack it several ways. One, you increase the criminal penalties for that happening, particularly if you're part of a gang, particularly if you use a firearm.
And you will do that?
And we're doing so. We've committed to doing so. You put in place a reverse onus in terms of bail so that it has to be proven that there's not a risk, which we've also committed to. And then you go to what Mr. Singh was talking about, which is we have to reinforce our frontiers. That's why we're committing to an extra 1,000 Canada Border Service agents, an extra 1,000 RCMPs. That's why, as part of the broader fentanyl initiative, where we've added to the RCMP there, we've added drones, we're adding helicopters, we're adding surveillance, and we're going to the other end of the chain with respect to car theft, which is tightening security at the ports. This is what we need. In order to get results, you need to focus at both ends of the chains in federal.
The ports are barely checked.
One of the issues that has come up is the idea of the public safety concerns around the overdose crisis and how this is devastating our communities. We're seeing so
illegal
many
aliens
lives being lost. In that, we know that one of the ways
Call me
to
racist
address
now.
that is by investing in some of the solutions like mental health services and rehabilitation services. Services keep our communities safe.
How
having
dare you
access
call
to
me
those good
racist.
Services. Both Mr. Carney and Mr. Poilievre are proposing cutting government spending and cutting those services. That's not going to make our community safer. We need to see better investments in rehabilitation services, more investments in mental health. We need to respond to this serious crisis in our country with care and compassion. I met with Moms Stop the Harm, an organization of moms that have lost their children to this opioid overdose crisis. They've
you
literally had
created
their
and
children
you
have
supported
died because of this.
in
And
BC.
they're saying we need to do everything possible to save lives, to stop this death from happening. And I think we need to listen to those moms. And that's my commitment.
Mr. Blanchet.
Two things as rapidly as possible. First, we believe that we should act on crime gangs and organizations, defining them as we do for terrorist organization. We have to protect our kids from the violence of those gangs, from the drugs being sold by those gangs, from the guns and whatever else being stolen, being sailed, being by those gangs.
Sold?
And not sold, being, you purchase a thing and selling, sold by those gangs. And we mostly have to protect our kids from being recruited by those gangs, becoming violent at 13 and 14 and 16 years old, because this is the real fear of parents like I am. This is a very dangerous situation. I want to come back to immigration because we said that we would come back to immigration. Do you remember the Century Initiative? A sad memory. Officially, they said that they had not considered Quebec difference. They had not considered Quebec language. They wanted Canada to be a 100 million people country by the end of the century. Mr. Barton told me himself that he had not even thought about the Quebec difference in that analysis. And one of his closest collaborators is now a close consider to Mr. Carney, which seems to be part also of that kind of project or ideology. So it is impossible for Canada to have all those people come into Canada. It is impossible for Quebec to receive all those people. And in Quebec, we have the language and values and secularity of the state issue, which is very important. So I say, pause. Let's do things properly. Let's receive migrants in an orderly fashion and successfully as a measure of respect for them also.
Mr. Poilievre, you wanted a word.
I speak to families all the time who are terrified by the scourge of drugs and illegal guns. And we know those guns are not Grandpa Joe's hunting rifle. So when the Liberals try to ban hunting rifles, they're really going after the wrong people. 90% of guns that come in that are used in crime are smuggled illegally over the porous, Liberal-run borders. And that's why the police. It's not true, and that's why the police actually, if I could,
shut up,
Singh. Actually endorsed me. The police in Barrie, in Peel, in Sault Ste. Marie have all endorsed me because they know that I will go after the gun smugglers and criminals with 2,000 extra frontline border guards that will stop the guns from coming in.
Now you want to hire?
But unlike
NDP,
he's such a bastard. Rifles. The Liberals want to protect. I want to protect Canadians from criminals. The Liberals want to protect turkeys from hunters. I think we know which one makes the most sense.
Carney, quick intervention, Mr. Carney, then I got a question for each of you before this segment's out.
Okay. We absolutely fully support hunting and rights of hunters and Indigenous Canadians. But I want to raise an issue, which is a serious issue, talking about safety. There are people, we're in Montreal, in Toronto, across this country, who fear going to their synagogue, fear going to their community center, fear taking their children, leaving their children in school. And this has to stop. This is it's totally unacceptable.
Jagmeet will be destroyed.
Is to make it a criminal offense to threaten or to impede anyone from being near or going to.
When Rebel News asked a question yesterday, he was mad.
It pains me that when we have to do it, because this is not what we should be doing as Canadians, of course, but we will put that in place.
Let me get
back. And this is a fundamental issue with respect
Let me
to any
get 10 seconds from each of you before this segment's out on what you perceive to be the biggest security threat to Canada right now. 10 seconds each. Mr. Poilievre.
The physical security threat to our country is the rampant crime wave that is running out of control. After the last decade, we had a 116% increase in gun crime. We need to lock up the criminals.
I got to hold you to 10 seconds. Mr. Carney?
Well, we're in a security section. I think we didn't have a chance to talk about anything internationally. I think the biggest security threat to Canada is China.
Chinese.
Biggest security threat: illegal guns and drugs coming across
China.
the border, and cuts to services that would make our public safety and security even worse.
China comes from a guy who is
Either Quebec
public
or
by
Canada is able
China.
to protect itself, in that we are still dependent and entirely dependent on Americans to protect us.
Okay, that is the end of that section. Gentlemen, up next, energy and climate.
This is going to be juicy.
Pipelines, getting things built, unleashing production.
We are unlocking major infrastructure projects, including in conventional energy.
What happened with...
We're speaking thousands of dollars a year for each family to pay for the damages of climate change.
We can absolutely build important projects like an east-west energy grid.
Energy and climate change. I know how much all of you love talking about pipelines, so here we go. Mr. Singh, to you first. Should Canada build new pipelines to get our oil and gas to market?
Well, it's not an approach I favor with public
Say
money.
no.
There's not any projects that are on the table.
Say
there's not
no.
a specific project. to
Say
look
no.
at. I favor, when it comes to the environment,
No.
building an east-west energy grid that connects low-cost energy and allows for families to reduce their electricity costs. But let's put this all in context. We're talking about what our energy solutions are in the context of a climate crisis. And we're not just talking about a climate crisis in the far future. We're living it right now. I remember I met a mom a couple of years ago before I had kids who told me she was worried about taking her kids out on some days because of the forest fires in BC. It meant that it was unsafe for kids to go outdoors. Fast forward to when I became a parent just a
Arsonists.
couple years after that, and I literally worry about the same thing. The forest fires we saw a couple of years ago meant that many places that didn't see this before saw days where there was such smoke in the air that it was dangerous for kids. We see
Arsonists.
extreme weather, forest fires, heat domes, floods impacting us. We've got to do everything we can.
Thank you,
protect our
Mr.
future.
Singh. That's time. Mr. Polyev,
We haven't
where does
answered your
fighting
question,
climate
idiot.
change land on your list of priorities when it comes to
Oh,
expanding
that's gonna
energy
be juicy.
opportunities in this country?
It
Go.
lands within our priorities of bringing home jobs while bringing down emissions around the world. Look, the reality is that if we push production out of our country to more polluting countries, it actually makes the problem worse. But that has been exactly the Liberal approach with the anti-development law, C-69, blocking of 15 LNG export plants over the last 10 years. We have seen more of those jobs go abroad. I want to bring them home. My plan will be to approve, for example, natural gas liquefaction and export. If we sent our gas to India, for example, to displace half of their demand for electricity, we could reduce emissions by 2.5 billion tons, which is 3 times the total emissions of Canada.
Canada
That's the
doesn't
way we
even
bring
make
emissions down
CO2
and jobs up. It's common sense, and now it's time to bring it home.
Thank you, Mr. Polyev.
At the
The
carbon
next
tax.
question is for Mr. Carney. How would your government fast-track pipelines and mining projects while also following the Supreme Court decision that requires consent of Indigenous communities?
Well, I think the first thing, and this goes back a
What
bit
kind
to
of
where
question
we
is
started,
that?
which is recognizing that we are in a crisis. We need to act with maximum force, and having a process and a consultation, but a consultation with a purpose, which is to identify those projects, those investments of national interest that are really going to move the dial in terms of growth, jobs, energy security, while being consistent with long-term competitiveness, which necessarily means lower carbon. And so part of that process is ensuring that First Nations, Indigenous peoples, are there from the start. It also includes their ability to participate fully in those projects. And that's why, and I know I can tell, like, you've got to tell on when I've gone on too long, so I'll finish up, which is, that's why we're doubling. Our proposal is to double the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program to $10 billion. What does that actually mean? It means an ability for them to invest equity in
Thank
those
you, Mr.
projects
Carney.
and be
That's
full
time.
partners. Thank you.
And why is that you invest in pipelines in the
Mr.
US?
Blanchet, do you still
Well,
oppose
cutting jobs
pipeline
here in
construction
Canada,
Quebec, even though a
idiot.
majority of Quebecers now apparently say they support it?
We will know
Oh.
about that when we have held the debate about that, which has not begun yet. We are just beginning it. First, we are hearing very creative numbers, and we are being fed nonsense. And we will be back to it in a few minutes. But energy, trade, commerce is from south to north or north to south. And it's true in Quebec also. In a little more than 3 years, Donald Trump won't be in office, and there will be not one more pipeline having been built once we get there. So let's be serious, responsible, and we will be back with the numbers. We don't want to pay in Quebec for such monstrosities, which will provide us with nothing.
I'm
We now
sorry,
move to
but
open debate,
there's
and
no
you
private
all
money. It's
will
not
get a
even
chance or have
public
had a
money
chance to get the
involved.
first shot at this. Monsieur Blanchet, it is your turn to get the first shot. Canada has a substantial supply of critical minerals, which are in high demand. Are you in favor of allowing these minerals to be mined?
Of course, it has to be done properly. Quebec has probably the most important clean phosphate reserves in North America.
The what?
In Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, it is very important. It has to be exploited. This is the best way to use Paul Saguenay as an infrastructure that we need. We have lithium. Everybody needs lithium. Transportation has to be taken from oil to clean energy. This is what we want to be working on. It is part of the specifics of Quebec economy. So we are in favor of that, but we don't want to pay for the $30 billion which have been spent on oil and gas by the
But you will
Liberals last
not.
year. It's
private
$7
money.
billions of dollars from Quebec.
It's
We don't
private
want to
money.
pay for the $40 billions which have been spent by the Liberals on Trans Mountain. It's $9 billion from Quebec. Those are $16 billion of which not $1 has been spent in Quebec to develop a lot more power and wealth for Quebecers with our own money.
We need to let the leader of the Liberals respond.
Well, actually, I was going to pick up on the enormous opportunity that exists in Quebec, exists in Ontario, exists in the north of Canada, really exists across this great nation in terms of critical metals and minerals. We are have one of the biggest resources in this country. And this is, it's not just an enormous economic opportunity, it is a strategic opportunity for Canada. So we have to make a decision, not just to develop it, but how do we develop it and who are our partners for it? Do we become more dependent on the United States, which is what they want? By the way, President Trump this week said he might put a tax on critical metals and minerals, just showing again
Yeah, but
the unreliable.
the job is not
if I may,
to-
and so the
job is
discussions
to
that
negotiate.
So
You have to have
if I may,
Paris
if I may
Let's
finish.
let him finish.
Let me finish. So the opportunity includes in Europe and includes in Asia as our partners. Last point. In order to get it done, we'll put in place a first and last mile fund. So these projects are connected to road and rail so they can go quickly to market. And we will have all of the other fast tracking measures in place that I talked about earlier in terms of capital, timing, approvals, so that we can move quickly, we can be stronger at home. Better.
Always with the
Mr. Singh.
approval of
Yeah,
Quebec.
I
Mr.
think
Singh has the floor.
about that.
we should absolutely take advantage of the fact that we've got incredible amounts of critical minerals in our country. And the way we do that is with any energy project or any project of this nature, make sure it's got the local community buy-in. It creates good jobs in communities, make sure we are meeting all our environmental needs, and we work with Indigenous partnerships.
Ring road.
And so I absolutely agree with that. I want to build on something Mr. Blanchet mentioned about the investments that this country has made. What I found very troubling is that the past number of years, the Liberal government record
That
is one
you
where we
propped.
spent the most subsidies compared to any other country in the G7 on subsidizing oil and gas. These are highly profitable companies.
You
I
voted
think that's
for
a
it.
wrong thing to do. You fought against it again and again.
Truth be
And the
told.
Liberals have
Over
continued
and
to do
again.
it. And so my question really to
Oh
Mr.
my
Carney is,
gosh,
will you
he is-
commit to
he has
ending
been
oil and gas
nuked.
subsidies?
Yeah.
We should be using that to invest in people, not giving it to highly profitable oil and gas companies.
Yeah, we talk.
I promised Mr. Polyev the next, we'll come back and get that question answered. Mr. Polyev.
Well, Mr. Carney, you point out that Donald Trump has a wrong-headed idea of putting a tax on our mines and our industry. And that is wrong. But so do you. You want to apply a massive industrial carbon tax on Canadian mines, Canadian steel mills, Canadian aluminum plants,
You want to let them just split as
Canadian
much as they
oil
want?
and gas. And your idea is to double the tax that Trump is applying by hitting them a second time. This
Yeah.
will do nothing for the environment. It will actually ship our jobs south of the border.
Mr. Pollier's plan is let them
like
pollute as much as they
President
want.
Oh,
It's not a good
shut
plan.
up.
My plan is to bring that production home here to Canada. For example, I will give a tax credit to low emitting Canadian industry like Quebec's aluminum, for example, or British Columbia's natural gas, so that we not only bring home the production, but we do it below global average levels of emissions, so that we actually help the environment while bringing home jobs for our people
We have to let him
at the
finish.
same
Yeah,
time.
don't stop.
That is
Don't
a
stop.
sensible, pragmatic approach that puts us in charge of our economic
Loser.
destiny, so we can stand up to the Americans from a position of strength for a change.
Mr. Carney, we've got. Hang on a second. I want to give you a chance to speak to Mr. Singh's criticism about oil and gas subsidies, and criticism about the industrial carbon tax.
Okay, I'm going to make 3 points. I'll make 4 if you want me to respond to that, but I want to make 3. The first is that I answered this question last night, but I think the puck had already dropped in the Canadians game, so not everyone heard it. Yes, end to oil and gas subsidies.
That's why you need new Democrats.
Secondly, I would have done it independently. Secondly, recognizing that the biggest component of that was the cost of building Keystone. Keystone, which is the pipeline which has helped to increase oil and gas oil exports rather by 50% in this country. That is an asset of the people of Canada. We own it. And the question of what to do, it's not a subsidy that has disappeared, is actually an asset of Canada. The third point, though, in terms of where the oil and gas industry, particularly the oil industry, wants to and needs to go, which is to become low carbon in the production and transportation of oil. One of the big projects we need to move forward with is carbon capture and storage, the Pathways project.
That is a huge scam, by the way.
Competitive.
Capture and storage is such
10 years from now and 20 years from now, as the world uses less, we want to have more market share. We need to do that. My government will move that.
But by definition, a subsidy isn't when we buy a pipeline. I'm talking about subsidies that go to oil and gas companies, independent, separate from the country, oil and gas companies. That's what I'm talking about.
The figure you quoted last night included the cost of the pipeline.
Do you want to address
billions
his
of
point?
dollars are spending? We got to stop spending.
Sorry, can we get you to address his point about the industrial carbon tax?
How much will the industrial carbon tax add to the price of a car?
So the first thing I want to say is I'm going to address the broader point. The broader point is the entire absence of a climate plan from Mr. Poilievre, which, by the way, is going to put our industry and our country at a disadvantage as we're looking for new trading partners. Guess what? Most people want to deepen our partnership in Europe, in Asia. Those countries care about whether or not you've made progress. Second thing is, we're designing a program so that the big polluters pay Canadians at home for making responsible climate choices, for retrofitting their home, getting their emissions down, or improving otherwise. And that is smart climate policy. It's better for the big polluters, and it's better for Canadians.
Chair Poilievre.
Mr. Carney didn't answer my question. I asked how much would an industrial carbon tax on Canadian steel add to the price of a car? He won't answer because he knows that it will be very expensive because there's lots of steel in cars. Now, Mr. Carney has temporarily
But you know the answer?
hidden the
You don't know
carbon
the answer
tax.
either. You're just throwing out random questions.
Thousands of
Just
dollars.
making it up. You don't
Extra
know.
costs.
I do know the answer to that question. He's wrong.
Jack Mead, you need to shut up.
Steel, you raise the price of everything that uses steel. When you add everything, taxes
It's a strawman argument to say you know the price.
when you add the carbon tax onto the price of, for example, fertilizer, you increase the price of food. So while Mr. Carney has temporarily hidden the Liberal carbon tax at the pumps while keeping the tax fully in law and planning to raise it after the election, he's also going after a tax on our industry that will ultimately be passed on to you. After a lost Liberal decade of rising costs, we cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a new government that will fully axe the carbon tax, increase the jobs that we have here in Canada, and bring down your cost of living.
We've got just a little over 3 minutes left in this segment. So, Mr. Singh, I want to ask you, do you think climate change is still a priority from Canadians? You're out there.
No.
Absolutely. You speak to any young person and they think,
no,
we're
I don't
seeing
give a
climate
F.
crisis in front of us happening right now. Speak to seniors who say, we
Shut
used to be able to
up.
live in our homes without air conditioning, and now we're seeing heat crises in communities that never had worries about extreme weather.
Shut up.
We're seeing flooding, we're seeing forest fires like never before. Living in a climate crisis.
Climate
So
engineering.
Canadians are absolutely worried about it. As soon as we come into a summer, we start seeing those forest fires again.
Geoengineering
It's top of
makes
mind for
climate
Canadians
change.
because they're living it, they're seeing it.
To
I
tell a
want those
lie.
Canadians to know.
Shut up.
Mr. Carney is not going to end those fossil fuel subsidies unless I'm there to fight back. Mr. Poilievre wants to let big polluters pollute as much as they want, poison our beautiful land, our water,
not true.
and air. He wants to let them into our oceans.
He's gonna
I'm
get
fight back and defend our
demolished.
environment.
Monsieur Blanchet, on the issue of whether or not people still care about climate change.
I think people should be kept very informed about climate change because we are in a very strange denial situation about climate change.
Of course.
Which still exists and is very expensive. And I'm sorry to crash your party, guys, but you are telling fairy tales. Clean oil and gas is a fairy tale.
Of course
Large
not.
scale carbon sequestration, sorry, I'm French, is a fairy tale. It does not exist. If Alberta wanted to exploit oil and gas and it were not a matter of pollution, I wouldn't mind at all. That's their business. Our own powerhouse in terms of energy in Quebec is clean energy. We are the best place in the world to achieve that. Our market is the northeastern part, Democrat part of United States. We want to keep our money to create wealth in Quebec for Quebecers. Let us be different because we can afford to be
Blanchet,
different.
let me give. I will get to you because I said I would. But you've taken a couple of hits here, and I want to give you a chance to respond to some of the things that people on this side of the stage have said.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we do support protecting the environment. We want to ban the dumping of raw sewage into our waters. We want to hold large corporations to high environmental standards to protect our water and air. But we cannot do that by raising taxes and sending jobs overseas, as Mr. Carney is proposing to do. That has been the approach of the last 10 years of the Liberal government. What the biggest companies that develop our resources say is that we need to repeal the Liberal anti-development law C-69, a law Mr. Carney wants to keep in place. They say we need to repeal the industrial carbon tax and get rid of the Liberal energy cap. We need 6 months approvals in order to get to take back energy security and energy sovereignty.
We can summarize that.
Last word to Mr. Carney in this segment, please.
Thank you very much.
Jack Meek is such a
I was born in
kid.
Fort Smith in the Northwest Territories, just north of what the oil sands became. When I was born and when I was growing up in Edmonton, early days,
Really?
it was a fairy tale, quote unquote. But you know what happened? Canadian ingenuity, Canadian engineers, Canadian governments, both the federal government and the Alberta government got together and converted this.
The worst pollution
If I may,
in the world.
if I may,
The worst
may I
pollution
finish?
in the
May I
world.
finish? May I?
10 more seconds to finish, please. Let him finish his point.
That's the opportunity we have. That's the opportunity we have in carbon capture. That's the opportunity we have in small modular reactors. That's the opportunity we have in hydrogen beyond. This country can be a clean energy superpower. My government will help deliver it.
And that is time for this segment. Gentlemen, let us go to our final theme, which is called Leading in a Crisis.
What the hell?
Canadians know how to weather a storm. Canadians know how to get through a difficult
That's
time.
the video.
At the end of
That's
day,
the video
we
where
can
the lady
definitely
on the right,
balance
she
of
was
power.
like,
Quebec is safer than it could be in any other scenario.
Now is not a time for weakness. Now is the time to take back control.
Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves.
what happened to Jeffrey Epstein?
Okay, leading in a crisis is a pretty broad theme that allows us to explore many different avenues.
Define
here.
crisis.
So let's get to it. Mr. Carney, you get the first question this time. We haven't balanced a budget in this country in 17 years, and 10 of those years were under your party. You have pledged to get us to a balanced budget in 3 years. Question is, how?
So let me put this in the
I'm a
context of
banker.
leading in a crisis,
I know
which is,
money.
in a crisis, you got to plan for the worst. Worst is that the U.S. actually does want to take us over. Secondly, you got to have a plan to build, and that'll include a fiscal plan, and I will get to that in a second. The third thing is you need to respond in a crisis with overwhelming force. You need to think big. You need to move rapidly. The things we've been discussing today are a subset of what we can and should do as a nation, and we can deliver. And government can play a role, but its role has to be catalytic. And so our approach is that we will slow the rate of spending. It's been growing at 9% a year, operational spending, program spending, away from transfers, individual, 9% a year. We'll slow that to 2%. We will focus on a small amount of capital spending by the federal government in order to drive enormous private investment up to $500 billion by 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Ukraine surely constitutes a crisis. Leading in a time of crisis, Mr. Poilievre, question for you. If the United States withholds support from Ukraine going forward, do you believe Canada should commit more to assist?
I believe we should continue to support Ukraine. Our party supported donating missiles that the Canadian military was decommissioning. We supported funds and other armaments to back the Ukrainians in the defense of their sovereignty.
I just love
we
when
also need to
Ukraine
rebuild
got
our
won.
own Canadian military
Vladimir
because the
got
Russians
spanked
want to
by
make
Trump.
incursions into our waters. We'll be
Like a
buying
little
4
zizzy.
massive Arctic icebreakers. I'll be opening the first Arctic base since the Cold War in Canada, CFB Iqaluit. We're going to double the size of the Arctic Rangers and fill the vacancies in our Canadian armed forces. We need a change to rebuild our military, which has been so disintegrated under the cuts and the mismanagement of the last 10 years. But we can have a change because we have the best soldiers, sailors, and airmen in the world, and they will have full backing from my government if you give me the honor of becoming Prime Minister.
I may come back to that one in the open forum because I'm not sure we got an answer about Ukraine on that one, but okay.
Well,
going on. Mr. Blanchet.
The answer was yes.
We'll get more details, perhaps, as we go forward. Mr. Blanchet, given the U.S. trade war, should any talk of a referendum on Quebec independence be put on pause?
That one is easy. It will happen only after the negotiation is over, and that's a good thing. I want to say I support the idea. We must help Ukraine, but we also must help the civilians of Gaza and we must destroy Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. You know what? I don't want to be the leader of Canada. You will understand that. I don't want to be Prime Minister, but I can offer to be a partner.
What?
A responsible partner.
Then why exactly you're running federally, you
Quebec
idiot?
is respected in its differences, in its
my
aluminum
gosh,
industry,
he
and
just
lumberwood
killed
industry,
himself.
and culture, and French language, and values of secularity of the state, which is the price to be paid in order to have real equality. Then, if we are respected, we will be a partner, and then even Canada will be stronger in its negotiation against Donald Trump. This is what I am offering. Respect us.
Mr. Singh, I watched last night's debate. You seemed very eager to talk about healthcare, so let's talk a little more healthcare right now.
Shut
You have made many promises on healthcare. If a province says to you, we'll take your money for healthcare, but not your conditions on how to spend it, what do you do?
We've got to negotiate. We can't be giving away money without clear conditions. We're in a healthcare crisis right now. And a crisis
Because
that
we
is
have too
hurting
many people in
across
here.
this country. People are waiting desperately in line in emergency rooms for hours and hours. Seniors are waiting for years and years to get the care that they need for surgeries that would remove pain or help them deal with mobility issues. We're in a serious crisis. Healthcare workers are burnt out. They are overstretched. And what we're seeing is more and more privatization, and that is hurting our public universal healthcare system. So we've got to fight back against it. We cannot allow our public money to go to a for-profit private clinic lining the pockets of a rich CEO or investors instead of going towards care. We need to make sure that we are investing in solutions where care gets to people, not profiting those at the very top. And so that's my commitment. I'm going to fight to make sure we defend our healthcare against the threats of Americanization.
Orange man bad. Orange man bad.
Mr. Poilievre, you get the first word here. This might be a good time to put a little more flesh on the bone of what you think Canada could do for Ukraine if the U.S. backs out.
Yes, and my answer is that we should continue to support Ukraine. We don't need to follow the Americans in everything they do. When they're wrong, then we will stand on our own and with other allies. And with respect to Ukraine, that of course includes support with intelligence, equipment, armaments. But it also includes defunding Putin. Right now, Vladimir Putin has a monopoly on the European energy market because, frankly, the Liberals blocked exports of Canadian natural gas off the Atlantic coast. They blocked
regardless that's Putin or not.
I would rapidly approve those projects on national security grounds so that we can actually ship Canadian natural gas over to Europe, break European dependence on Putin, defund the war, and turn dollars for dictators back into paychecks for our people.
Mr. Carney, you wanted to add?
Well, I want to go to the situation in Ukraine because it's very important. We've been a steadfast, Canada has been a steadfast ally, and Canadians have stepped up, welcoming Ukrainians into their homes and supporting them in other ways. You know, in my first month as Prime Minister, we joined the Coalition of the Willing to support Ukraine as the U.S. stepped back. So led by France, the United Kingdom, with Ukraine number European nations, Australia, ourselves, New Zealand. That's an example of how the new world is going to be. Canada participating in these areas and helping. It also means open trade. Mr. Poilievre voted against free trade agreement with Ukraine. It means aid for Ukraine. Mr. Poilievre wants to cut foreign aid, including for Ukraine, or not. He didn't mention support for aid for Ukraine. We have to stand by them. We have to be there, and this government has been.
Mr. Singh.
New Democrats absolutely support standing with Ukraine and will continue to do that. But I appreciate the opportunity in talking about leadership in crisis, talk about many of the crises we're up against. And one of the crises we're up against in our country
It's always been bad.
Donald Trump, with the threat of the trade war, and with the privatization and Americanization of our healthcare system is the healthcare system. And what we have learned today, Mr. Carney mentioned slowing operation spending. That's a cut to services. He said his plan.
Optimization.
To balance the operating budget within 3 years. That's going to require massive cuts to spending. We calculated that at $43 billion in cuts.
Oh my
in fact,
God, he's such a
Rosemary Barton,
tool.
when he was on the show on February 16th, he said
He's
we would cut spending.
insufferable.
He said it would be in operations. He defined it as transfers in health. And finally, longtime Liberal and former House Leader Karina Gould said that Mr. Carney's plans would mean massive cuts. That's the only way to achieve it. So, Mr. Carney, do you think it is leadership to cut health care at a time when it is in crisis? I think it is wrong. You can't do that.
We will not.
They're in crisis because of the jabby
We will
jab.
not cut health care spending, full stop.
But
We'll
Mr.
have a
Carney,
detail, if I may.
Who do we
if I may.
believe, Mr. Carney today, or the one he spoke on Rosemary Barton's show on February 16th?
I did not.
The one that repeated again that he would cut spending? Who do we believe?
If I may, consistently said we'll preserve all transfers to the provinces, including the increases. We will preserve all the transfers to individuals, I won't detail them all, but there. So we're looking at addressing an operational spend, which is about $150 billion. We will address that. We will make it more efficient, and we will do it in 3 years, and we'll balance that budget.
Mr. Blanchet.
I am 6 minutes behind Mr. Carney, so I will speak a little bit longer. First, I will support any initiative which will bring Canada aligned with Europe and NATO in order to be stronger and facing new threats.
That means pay more than 2% of budget in
war
military
than anybody else. But we have responsibilities, and our main ally is removing himself from the stage. So we have to step up. We have to do our part. I want to go somewhere else entirely, however. I want to ask Mr. Carney, if we're speaking about leadership here, if Quebec and Canada were to say, you are not being given a majority government, there will be more conservatives than you would like, maybe more New Democrats than you would like, and more people from the bloc than you would like. Will you accept, because you don't seem to be very eager about that, to deal with people which basically are more experienced than you are, as legitimate as you are, and would be more representative altogether than you would be being alone in your little kingdom? And I want also to propose to you all guys that 1 week after the election, we all meet, whatever the result, and we start dealing with this crisis together, because this is what people, either they are from Alberta or Quebec or wherever, this is what people expect from us.
Mr. Carney, is that something you could get behind?
I look forward to meeting with everyone. You're welcome to come, Steve, if you'd like. Week after crisis, but
That's
also,
not
but
very-
in all
that's
seriousness,
not very respectful.
No, but I'll
That's
come.
not very
but I'm
respectful.
coming. I'm coming. On peut jaser un peu. Okay, I will. Okay. I come to the.
On jase.
Yeah. Okay. I'll come to the core.
In English,
But,
please.
In a crisis, yes, you need a team, and you need to bring the country along with you. So what I did in the first week was to bring the premiers together, meet with all the Indigenous leaders, and move forward in that context. Now, the question is, who's going to lead out of this? Whoever leads out of this, if I may, Mr. Blanchet, thank you. Whoever's going to lead out of this is going to need to work with all the provinces, work with Labour, work with Indigenous leaders, work with all Canadians to bring them forward in a united front. And if I'll make this last point, one of the things that has happened, which is a credit to those people at home, is that Canadians are coming together. And it's our responsibility to meet. the strength of Canadian unity.
Still lagging. I have one small point to make.
Yep.
You will be elected, if you are elected in the parliament where there are other leaders. I don't know if he called you or Mr. Poilievre, I don't know if he called you, but before yesterday, you have not spoken to me once, even if I proposed it so many times. But you say, I speak to provinces' leaders. You're not elected in provinces. You are in the parliament where people are to make decisions which might not always suit you. But this is democracy, which you don't know too much about.
I'm going to jump in here because I'm noticing what the clock is saying, and you brought up Gaza earlier, and I think our audience would be interested in hearing your views on the other major international crisis facing the world right now.
Before we get that, just to finish up.
Don't talk
I just wanna
about
speak to
Palestine.
Healthcare workers right now who are deeply worried about the status of our healthcare system. To Canadians who believe and love our universal public healthcare system. To patients who are stressed out. If you're worried about which Mr. Carney to believe, the one today or the one who spoke on 3B shows and said he would cut, vote for New Democrats, and we will fight to defend our healthcare.
I think your
we will never
supporters
let
would really
anyone
like
cut
to
it.
hear what you have to say about this question, and we have less than 5 minutes for it here.
He is
What role should
absolutely
Canada play in the other major international crisis in this world?
unable to answer
In the
questions.
Middle East and the war in Gaza. Pierre Poilievre, would you start us off on that? What role can Canada play?
Well, first of all, we must condemn Hamas, and more importantly, the terror sponsors in Tehran who initiated the attacks, the horrific attacks
That
of
will be
October 7th.
Jack, me will have a lot of issues
to
answering
defeat
that question.
the terrorists.
I smell it
that
from here.
All the peoples of the world can live in peace and defend the right of, yes, Palestinians to have their own lives free from the oppression of Hamas dictators and Iranian intervention, while Israel has the ability to live in freedom and peace. But I also want to say, we need to get back to the Canadian tradition, which is that when people come to this country, they leave foreign conflicts behind. The rampaging riots targeting Jewish communities is utterly unacceptable, and it points to the growing chaos that we see on our streets after 10 years of
Jack Meek
incredibly
was asked
irresponsible
about
liberal
it from
policies
Rebel
on
News,
weak
and
borders, of
he
dividing
told
people into groups, of saying
Drea
one thing to one
to
group
basically
and
F
the
off.
opposite to another, dividing and conquering. We must end that division and unite our people so that everyone feels safe, and that when we come here, we put our foreign conflicts behind and we put
That's
Canada
not people.
Mr.
People
Singh,
come
please,
from
go
countries
ahead.
from around the world, and they care deeply about where they come from, and they should be able to do so. That's a part of being in our country, to have that freedom. Your treatment of Palestinians has been frankly disgusting. Your treatment of people from the care and service of people in Gaza has been disgusting. On top of that, people in Israel and in Palestine deserve to live in peace and security. And Mr. Carney, to date, you've not acknowledged that what's going on in Gaza is now clearly become a genocide. It's important to call things out as they are, and you've not done that.
Mr. Carney.
We need to work, to go to your question, we need to work with our international partners, maximum pressure, maximum encouragement for an immediate ceasefire. That's the first thing. Encourage the return of all of the hostages, resumption of humanitarian aid. My government put in place $100 million of humanitarian aid, which is ready to go. With respect to where this ultimately goes, yes, two-state solution, but it has to be a viable and free Palestinian state, living side by side in peace and security with the state of Israel. I will underscore one other thing. Mr. Poilievre rightly mentioned Iran. The Iranian sponsors in this region, we have to be clear-eyed about the fundamental risks of Iran and do everything with our international partners to check it and turn it.
Mr. Blanchet.
If we are to work together, we will have to be consistent. The Jewish community in Quebec and Canada is harassed by a very little minority of
Palestine.
And we don't do so much. The law in Canada says that somebody may invite people to be violent, to propose genocide against another people if they can be hidden behind a religious motivation. They are in agreement with that. They are in agreement with that. They are in agreement with that. And we say it is a crime to invite people to violence and killing other people. And this is what is being done very often in Canada and Quebec with the approval of the Criminal Code of Canada. And we are saying this has to be changed. We have to change what we do before we want people elsewhere to change what they do.
Last minute in this segment, Monsieur Poilievre.
This is about crises and leadership. And one crisis we have is in immigration. Because of this Liberal government's commitment to a radical policy called the Century Initiative, which seeks to bring our population up to 100 million people, they have allowed massive overcrowding in our communities. That has caused housing shortages, job shortages,
blame immigration
and
for the fault of your government.
And if I could,
the fact that you did
sorry,
not
I didn't
invest
interrupt
in
you.
Oh
I
my
did not
gosh, he is such a chill, such a kid.
Let him finish.
Let the adults
I do not
finish.
blame immigrants. I blame the Liberal government, which brought this policy on. And Mr. Carney wants to continue with the Century Initiative. This is crazy. We have to get back to normal levels of immigration, get rid of the fraud in the temporary immigration system, and ensure that the people who come here can arrive in numbers that we can house, employ, and care for. That's how it always was, and that's how we're going to restore
Thank
it.
you, Mr. Poilievre. That is our time for this segment. Those are our 5 themes, but we are not done yet. We are entering the next section of our debate tonight, what we're calling the leader's choice, something a little bit different. Each of you will get the chance to ask a question, any question, of any other leader. You can then debate the answer, and each one on one will last for 3 minutes. So, Mr. Singh, you have the first option here. Who do you want to ask your question of?
Mr. Carney.
Go for it.
Mr. Carney, as chair of Brookfield Investments, your company is one of the biggest tax dodgers in Canada. As chair, you approved decisions where Brookfield Investments bought up affordable homes, kicked out the tenants, and jacked up the rates. As Prime Minister, one of the first things you did was a tax cut that helped out mostly millionaires. And you have a plan to cut services for people. Now, I expect that of Mr. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. That's very much a conservative plan. But my concern is that doesn't sound like what people want for a Liberal leader. So my question to you is, Mr. Carney, whose side are you really on?
Thank you very much for that question, Mr. Singh. I'm on the side of Canadians. I'm in this for Canadians. I work for Canadians.
Really?
But your track record doesn't show that, though.
No, I have a track record of public service for this country. Go back to something Mr. Blanchet referenced earlier, which is have I resolved any crises? We're in Quebec. If you ask anyone in the finance industry, if you ask anyone in government in Quebec in 2008, they'll know that I resolved the biggest crisis in Quebec. Yeah,
you want to have fun.
But
60 million.
But I'm in fairness with Mr.
This is for these two.
Yes, I have had a long career in the private sector. I'm proud of that career. I've always acted with integrity.
Really?
And it brings me with experience that I can apply in this moment of crisis.
And you certainly have served the country. But the problem is, who have you served? You've served to benefit those at the very top. You jacked up the price of homes for people living in affordable homes as a strategic decision. You dodged taxes. And then your decisions as Prime Minister show you're not prioritizing people, but you're prioritizing big business, billionaires.
So what have we done as a government directly? So we've gone directly to workers using all of our proceeds from the tariffs, committing all of them for workers, the workers most affected in
the employment insurance isn't
unlike others, unlike others who plan to use them to cut taxes. We are focused on
the EI is not high enough, though. You have to accept that. Right now,
there will be additional programs. I am fully confident that the next government, whatever government is formed, or certainly if I'm in the next government, we will make additional programs.
But you didn't do that so far, though.
Well, I can't. You couldn't. Well, you couldn't, given that we're in an election process.
Could have increased.
May I make a
I'm curious to see who is going to fight
when you think
Jack
about
Meat.
workers here today and people watching at home, particularly younger people. There is an enormous opportunity in the trades, in the skilled trades. We are going to build this country in a way that has not been seen before. We are literally talking about hundreds of thousands, not jobs, but careers in the trade. And that's why we're investing in apprenticeships and mid-career.
But I think people are worried, Mr. Carney, if New Democrats aren't there to force Liberals to make sure they remember about people they will forget.
Gentlemen, that is time. Thank you for that. Monsieur Blanchet, you have the next question. To whom would you like to put it?
Mr. Carney, you avoided quite.
Lex, everybody is jumping on Carney, isn't it?
The questions of Mr. Singh, but first, let me correct something. In 2008, not so much by your decision 10 billions of dollars were given to car industry in Ontario. While 60 millions, not billions of dollars were lent to lumberwood throughout the whole of Canada. I don't believe that's the right way to manage a crisis, since you did not recoup the money from the car industry. Then, you have been the manager of Brookfield. It's supposed to be a green investment fund, but we now know that 50% of the investments of Brookfield is in fossil fuel. It's not so green. You seem to want to support oil and gas industry.
The bloc is so obsessed with
you want to
green
support
bullshit.
prefab housing, and it's also in the investments of Brookfield, but not in Canada. You want to support nuclear power, smaller reactors, which are more dangerous, by the way.
No.
And Brookfield has investments in Westinghouse. You have hidden the money of Brookfield in Bermuda.
Westinghouse is sell
Cayman
and make
Islands.
nuclear reactors, by the
Billions
way.
of dollars. Billions of dollars lost for Canada. You are having your
some time to
taxes
answer.
being paid by families,
As well as
workers,
Siemens and General Electric.
elders in Canada and Quebec, instead of paying your own taxes. So I want to know, will you, before the election, reveal all the details of your assets, as Mr. Singh has done, as Mr. Poiliev has done, and as I have done? We have a right to
let's
know
let him answer.
under those circumstances.
Let's let him answer.
Well, the first thing is
Blind trust.
I want to say a word about. I'll say a word about Brookfield. You know, this is a Canadian success story. It is the largest infrastructure investor and developer in the world. It is one of the largest, if not the largest, developer of renewable power in the world. And who benefits from that? That's Canadian pensioners. That's Quebec pensioners. That is teachers. That is firefighters. It is a series of people, including individuals on this stage, benefit from that. Now, always acted with integrity, served the shareholders of Brookfield when I was there. I have left that. I have followed all the rules well in advance.
So let's
I have followed
reveal
all
your
the
assets.
rules well in
Let's
advance.
reveal your assets like we all did.
And working for the people of Canada.
What do you own? Why
And that is
don't
time,
you tell
gentlemen. That is time.
what you own?
Monsieur Blanchet, we're moving on to Mr. Poilievre now, who has his opportunity to ask the question of whomever he'd like here, and that will be
Mr. Carney.
Predictable.
Let me begin by setting the stage. The choice in this election is, after a lost Liberal decade of rising cost and crime and a falling economy under America's thumb.
Get him.
Do we want
Get
to
him.
elect them to a fourth term?
No.
Or do we want to change? Change so that you can afford food and homes. Change so that you can be safe on your street, and change so that your paycheck grows faster than your cost of living. Change with a new Conservative government. Because Mr. Carney has not changed. Mr. Carney, in 2020, it was recorded, you began advising Justin Trudeau. It's on the Liberal Party website today that you are Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. They might want to update your website on that. On June 3rd,
Well, send it to me. I'll do it.
21. You said that inflation would be a sign of economic progress. And you advised governments, including Justin Trudeau's, your Liberal government, to print money, which led to the worst inflation crisis in a generation. Now, that means that mothers went to bed with empty fridges and empty bank accounts, worried how they'd feed their kids, that seniors worried they'd be evicted from their homes, that young
bank
people
accounts during the
believe
Congo
they'd never
too.
be able to own a home in the first place. Now, in retrospect, you look back on the Liberal decisions that you advised Justin Trudeau to take. Will you look the camera in the eye and apologize to the many people who suffered as a result of the inflationary policies that you advised Justin Trudeau to implement?
You know,
No.
it's.
Come on.
I said earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I know you want to be running against Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau isn't here.
Are you denying you
am
were his
here.
economic advisor?
I did not provide any of that advice.
Whoa!
I'm sorry.
Whoa! Are you accusing your Liberal Party of lying about your role? Because it says today you can go to the Liberal Party website now, and it says that you were Justin Trudeau's economic advisor.
The way you judge someone, in my view, is how they act, what they do when they have responsibility. Twice I was a central bank governor. And in both cases, if I may, in both cases when I was responsible for inflation, inflation was less than 2%. I'll add that when I was here responsible for the Bank of Canada, inflation was less than 2%. Our dollar was at parity. That is the kind of success that I can deliver for this country coming out of this crisis. And what is at stake here? What is at stake? What is at stake here?
That gave us the worst inflation that we have had in a generation, because the policies that you implemented and those of the MPs that are still in your ministry,
to the
fellow Canadians,
which
the last 10 years,
the 9 guys who are like
the
traitors.
next 10 years should be about you.
Yeah,
And
9 traitors.
Mr. Carney, the good news is the next question is yours.
Well, I'm going to ask myself a question.
What an idiot.
Actually, I'm going to ask a question which has been troubling me. And it's troubling me because, we are in a very dangerous and divided world.
Who is it to?
I'm going to ask a question of Mr. Poilievre.
Good.
Why not? We're in a dangerous and divided world. We talked earlier about the challenges in the Middle East.
He's going to kill him.
From Iran. Threats from
Fear
Russia,
is kill him.
aggression in Ukraine. We have the threats from China, which I raised. We have the United States, which is fundamentally changing.
China!
Its security relationships, its commercial relationships. We have all this. And in the context of that, everyone on the stage, Mr. Blanchet, Mr. Singh, myself, we have our top secret security clearance. We have our top secret security clearance. I got mine within 3 weeks. It wasn't hard, but I felt it was important that I had it so I could be in a position to be informed about that dangerous world and take decisions at. And Mr. Poilievre, it is now 950 days, if my numbers are right, since you've had the opportunity to get your top secret security clearance, and you've refused.
He's gonna kill him.
Why?
Well, first of all, I have got my security clearance when I was a minister. I got top secret clearance at the time, so there's no problem getting that. But when the government made this recent offer, they said that if I got the secret security clearance briefings, that I would be gagged under the security law, and I could be prosecuted if I spoke freely about matters of foreign interference. Now, given that Canada has experienced Chinese interference by Beijing, the government of China, in 2 consecutive elections, I needed to do my job to speak freely without fear of prosecution. And that was not something I would be allowed to do. Even Thomas Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, said that when he was the leader of the opposition, he never would have accepted the kind of gag order that your government and Mr. Trudeau's government was attempting to impose on me. And it's good that I'd made that decision, because it has allowed me to speak freely about things like the case where one of your candidates, sir, actually said that he wanted to send a political opponent to China under a bounty threatening his life or imprisonment, and you refused to get rid of him. Now, it might have something to do with the fact that you went to China not long ago to get a $250 million loan for your company. But the reality is, you refused to stand up for a Canadian who was being threatened by a foreign government, and I was able to speak freely on that matter because I refused the gag order that the Liberal government attempted to impose on me.
Well, there's a couple of interesting things. I think people at home have seen a robust debate here, and it's been a robust campaign, and it has not
Stop diffusing the question.
Or
Answer
Mr. Singh
it,
at times during his
idiot.
campaign by making challenges with respect to these issues. So one can address it. I
And
will observe, as someone with the top secret security clearance, that China is not the only country that is accused of foreign interference.
Really?
And
gentlemen, that is time
We'll leave
for
it
the
at that.
segment.
Shut
That's our
up.
time. Now, closing statements are still a few minutes down the road, so we have a little bit of time for some quick hit Q&As for each of you right now. Short questions, 45 seconds, please, on the answers, and we're going to go left to right as I look at you right now. Mr. Poilievre, you get the first question. To the best of my knowledge, you have not offered a hard timeline, as the other parties have, to meet Canada's NATO commitment of 2% spending on defense?
Oh,
When
because
would
he's
you hit
because of
that
Trudeau.
target?
My aim will be to 2030. That said, when we renegotiate our trade deal with the U.S., I know it's their priority to see us increase our military budget. One of the things I will say to the Americans is the more free trade, tariff-free free trade we have, the faster we can rebuild our military in Canada and reassert our sovereignty. And we will use that money to have heavy icebreakers in the north, Poseidon aircraft, fighter jets, a new base in the north, double the Arctic Rangers, fill the vacancies in the armed forces, and rebuild the warrior spirit that characterized our military since the birth of our country. We
Not the
will
woke
rebuild our
spirit.
forces, and we will stand behind our veterans.
Thank you, Mr. Polyev.
Please.
Mr. Carney, your question, you have cut both the consumer carbon tax and
No.
the capital gains tax increase that you inherited from your predecessor. Is that an admission that the Liberals made life less affordable for Canadians?
Good one.
I think let me give you the rationale behind both of those changes. First, with respect to the consumer carbon tax, in effect, it'd become too divisive for Canadians. Canadians received rebates. On the whole, they received more than the tax actually was, but some had represented that it was a tax without a rebate. It became divisive. It didn't serve its purpose. It made a relatively modest contribution to overall climate goals. I got rid of it. First act made Canadians whole. Secondly, but with respect to the capital gains tax, it's come up again. I'll be quick. This is a fundamental issue. We need to build this country. Builders, innovators, entrepreneurs need to be rewarded. That's why I brought it back.
And that's time. Thank you. Mr. Singh, would you change the existing cap on immigration?
I said that the level of immigration, first of all, we need immigration. It's fundamentally important to our country. And we speak to any small business owner, you speak to people here in Quebec, you speak to farmers. It's fundamentally important. A couple things, though, we know we need to be able to set the amount of folks that we welcome to our country at a level that it meets our needs. So I would ensure that we've got an expert panel that makes that determination based on our economic needs. We also know that we should be very clear that the lack of investment from Liberals and Conservatives resulted in the fact that we have a shortage in housing. That's something that we've got to fix. I should also point out that if you are worried about the cuts being proposed by Liberals and Conservatives, vote for New Democrats. We'll fight back to protect Canadians and make sure that we've got the right immigration levels.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. That's time. Mr. Blanchet, Quebec, I believe, is now the only province with a carbon tax. Do you think that's fair?
It's not entirely true. It's not a tax. What Quebec has is a system by which we invite big emission companies, I don't know how to translate that, to reduce their emissions. If they do not, then they have to pay. It goes into a fund which is invested then in reducing emissions. Our partner is California, which makes this a huge deal about reducing emissions.
Another slush fund.
This is to be compared to what Europe does. And by the way, Europe would impose tariffs on Canadian oil if it ever got there. We're quite proud of that. And we have to be responsible because this is much less expensive than doing nothing to fight climate.
That's time. We're going to do another set of quick hits here, left to right again, and 30 seconds this time. Monsieur Polyev, you've previously promised to defund the CBC as one of your very first acts as Prime Minister. Is that still the plan?
Yep.
Yes, CBC will continue to operate as a self-funded, Canadian-owned and controlled non-for-profit that raises money like other media organizations through sponsorships, subscriptions, advertising, licensing fees, and countless other things that will ensure Canadians who still want to listen and view its content will be able to do so. And at the same time, we'll allow freedom of the press so that everybody has their voice heard and they can make their own decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. The next question to you, 30 seconds. Would you remove some of Canada's legal tax avoidance loopholes that companies that you have worked for have used?
Look, I think that what we need to do is undertake a comprehensive review of our corporate tax system. And do that on the basis of the right principles.
Like?
We've got to have fairness, transparency, sustainability, and competitiveness. So we need a tax system, a corporate tax system, including being part of a international minimum corporate tax through the OECD.
And that is time.
Means
Mr. Singh,
no.
the question for you is, if you hold the balance of power after this election is over, what would your price be to support another party?
He will
We've laid out
not.
our priorities. We want to make sure we bring down the cost of groceries, build homes that people can afford. I can also tell you that we would
Oh my
defend
God, he's such a
CBC, unlike
liar.
Mr. Poilievre, who wants to cut it. And we would close tax loopholes and offshore tax havens, even though Mr. Carney didn't respond to that. And selling stocks and shares to make profits and then having less taxes on that is not hard work. And so those aren't
So you
the job
mean that
creators.
if
The
I
people who are job
have
creators are
investments-
the hardworking men and women that contribute to our economy.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Monsieur Blanchet, kind of the same question. If you hold the balance of power in the next minority parliament, if it is that, what would be the price of your support?
Respect for Quebec. That's quite easy. I don't want to go against what Canada wants to do for itself, but I don't want Canada to impose an economic vision or a multiculturalist vision on Quebec, which is different in terms of language and values and secularity and equality between people. So I want to be a partner, and if Quebec is respected, Canada has nothing to fear from the bloc because we vote for what is good for Quebec. It only has to be good for Quebec.
Thank you, Monsieur Blanchet. Now, we have one last question for each of you. We'll go right to left this time as I look at you.
The wild
Bit
card.
of an offbeat question. Mr. Blanchet, what is your biggest regret during this campaign?
Ooh.
That's a very good question. I'm not very fond
Interesting
of
question.
regrets, I would say, but we should have started sooner to see that we had to create the environment for a deal in which Quebec and Canada would be, one bigger than the other, but partners to be stronger in front of Mr. Trump and showing that maybe nobody here is the partner to let go alone without being surveyed or controlled or supervised by a Quebec voice.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchet. Same question, Mr. Singh. Your biggest regret of this campaign?
Not being able to meet as many people as I would love to have. It's a short campaign, and so I can't get to as many communities that I wanted to. I think one of the honors of my job is
No,
to meet
because you're
people
broke.
and to hear their stories.
You're
and then to
just
take their
broke.
stories
You're
and
essentially
concerns
borrowing 20
and bring them
million
to Ottawa and to
from the
fight for those
BMO.
people. And so I want you to know, even though I haven't made it to your community, I'm
You're
gonna
driving
fight
on a
like hell to make
bus,
sure
not
that
a
you
plane
are-
like
you're represented,
everybody else.
That we never let any government cut our health care, that we defend the values that we care so deeply about,
Shut
and make
up.
life more affordable. That's my commitment to you. Even if I didn't get to see you, that's my commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Carney, same question. Biggest regret of the campaign?
I'm to be honest, it's the same answer. This is an astonishing country. It is an amazing country, and the opportunity and the responsibility that comes with it of being with Canadians, hearing their stories, their challenges, drawing strength and ideas from them, and working to be part of the solution is the greatest honor of my life. But the regret is that it is also a big country, and it is a short period of time.
What?
Mr. Poilievre, last word to you.
I actually agree with these two gentlemen. I had a rule that at all my rallies, even when they're really big, I would stand
That was
on the
awesome.
flag and
Size
salute every
matters.
single person and hear their stories and learn their struggles. And that was always touching to me that they would put their faith in me or in any of us.
Yeah.
But we've been in such a rush because we have to get off to the next event, so we haven't been able to stop and do that. And I want you to know out there, I haven't forgot about you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. It is time now for closing statements, and prior to the debate, you drew lots as to which order we would go in. And Mr. Singh, you get the first word on a closing statement.
Certainly, thank you. Because you voted for New Democrats, we were able to build this country that we love. Universal health care and pensions, because you voted for us. Because you voted for New Democrats, we were able to fight to bring in dental care, pharmacare, and
It's what they
childcare.
have.
Because you voted for us, because you supported us. You have the power with your vote to send more New Democrats to Ottawa to
I
continue
really
that.
wonder when their next leadership review
Us
is.
the things that we hold dear, like our health
I
care.
don't
We
know.
can do everything possible to make life more affordable by making it more affordable to buy your groceries and to get a home. I'm asking for your support in this election so that I can continue to fight to defend the things that make Canada, Canada, the things that we hold dear, the things that make us proud to be Canadian.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Carney.
We are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes.
Donald
Donald
Trump.
Trump is trying to fundamentally change the
Unpredictable.
world economy, the trading system. But
Or
really
it's been
what he's trying
bad.
to do to Canada, he's trying to break us so the U.S. can own us. They want our land, they want our resources, they want our water, they want our country. And we're all going to stand up against Donald Trump. I'm ready. I've managed crises over the years. I've built strong economies.
Really?
We'll fight back with counter tariffs. We will protect our workers and those businesses, and we will build the strongest economy. We will build Canada strong. I'm asking for your support.
No, thank you.
Doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Monsieur Blanchet.
For 260 years and a little bit more, les Français, devenus des Canadiens, devenus des Canadiens français, devenus des Québécois.
Speak English, please.
You have tried to have them become Canadians like all Canadians. But to no avail, we are different. So let's be economic partners. Let's have a voice chosen by and for Quebecers, an ally for Canadians as equals in front of Mr. Trump.
Monsieur Poilievre.
Only in Canada could someone start where I began and get to this stage. I was born to a single mother and adopted by school teachers who raised me to believe in the incredible Canadian promise that anyone who worked hard could do anything. That promise feels broken today. Many of you worried about paying your bills, feeding your families, or ever even owning a home. You're worried your kids are in danger. But I'm here to say it doesn't have to be this way. With change, we can restore the Canadian promise so that hard work gets you a beautiful house on a safe street under a proud flag. We can do it with hope for a change.
Gentlemen, thank you for a very spirited debate tonight. 2 quick points before we go. Number one of you celebrated your 60th birthday yesterday on this stage. Yves-François Blanchet, bon anniversaire.
Bon anniversaire. Merci beaucoup.
Bon fight.
Secondly, you'll notice we didn't have to change the time of this debate because the Leafs already clinched the Atlantic Division title, and therefore we didn't need to move the debate to accommodate a hockey game. I'm getting back at my colleague who was in this position last night, and okay, go Habs go, that's fine. With that, we're done. Thank you, leaders, for being here tonight. We are just 11 days from Election Day, April 28th, but there are many ways that you can cast your ballot starting tomorrow at advanced polls. If you intend to vote by mail,
who won the
that
debate?
deadline is April 22nd.
Yeah, I just
Make
waiting
sure
for
to
the
check your
questions
voter card
for the
details
scrum
or
at the
contact
end.
Elections Canada.
So I'm just gonna wait for the scrum at the end because that were very juicy.
Oh, right. That's going to go on. Well, I'm thankful to say I only watched about 5 minutes of the whole thing. I've been
Just
busy.
Just 5 minutes? Oh,
I just got in the house and opened up my phone and logged into your thing, and that's all I saw.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what happens is that this, because I use StreamYard, and StreamYard has the capacity of adding multiple guests like this, but essentially this is like the console side of things.
Yeah.
So right now I'm pushing on social media, I'm pushing on X, Rumble, YouTube, Telegram as well too. I want to see the questions at the very end of like the Scrum side of things. I know that Jack Mead was being Jack Mead, basically avoiding the questions, especially when it came from Rebel News. I don't know if you've seen them, but that was essentially very, very amusing and very funny.
Okay.
So
And you're going to live stream those.
Oh yeah, I'm basically live streaming since 4 p.m. actually. So almost 3 hours.
Man. Just 1 second. I got to talk to my kid for a second.
Okay.
Yep. Go. No, you have to check cows. So he volunteered to go check. We're in the middle of calving. So Max, we have to go out and drive out and check all the moms and check the calves. We do that about 4 times a day.
Oh, nice. Okay, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, thanks for joining. I mean, I was just like, so coming here. That'd be cool. I have probably like 50 people watching. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, did you watch the debate yesterday?
I watched the clips on X.
Oh,
hold
on. I have on CPAC, it says that the media scrums with the leaders had been canceled. Take a look at this. I'm just gonna, so basically they're canceling the scrum. That's new.
I wonder if it's because Rebel News had questions again.
That's probably what happened. I'm gonna keep an eye on the feed in case that changes, but that is very new. Normally they just keep this scrum and everything, but it seems that they canceled because the NDP was absolutely getting demolished during the scrum period yesterday.
Yeah.
They were absolutely destroying the leader, especially because what ended up happening was that all the independents like Junior News, True Note, and all those guys, they line up before everybody else.
Yeah.
And they was asking questions like, "Hey, what happened with the at the Funny Island type of thing? You know, hey, what happened? Are there two genders? You know, what?" Jack Me was asked by Rebel News, "Hey, do you know what happened with the 200 churches that were burned down?" And he was like, "Oh, because you're Rebel News, I'm not going to answer your question. You know what's going to happen." No, he's been a complete idiot. The usual NDP type of things. But I'm fan surprised that people are even voting for him. I mean, he is practically on his third campaign by now. And all I can tell you is that he is basically fighting for his political career right now. He is about to lose BC to a liberal, which is funny. And let's see how it goes from there. I know you're in Central Alberta. How are things going up over there? I know there is it's not the PPC. There's in Ponoka, I believe. Bonnie was talking about it. There was the
Grant Abraham.
Yes, how are things going over there?
Well, I live in the Yellowhead constituency. So
okay, that's
if you go a mile farther east, then you're in Ponoka Didsbury.
Oh, okay,
so I'm right on the line.
Okay, so that must be Jason with the PPC and that sort of thing, right?
No. Jason with the PPC is in Parkland.
But that's what you said. You're in Parkland, right?
No, sorry. I'm in Yellowhead.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Gotcha. I thought. Okay. Sorry. I apologize.
So my constituency contains Kananaskis, Banff, Canmore, Rocky, Drayton, Hinton, Edson, Grand Prairie, and I believe Grand Cache even. Or Grand Cache, but not Grand Prairie.
Really?
So it's huge.
Let me take a look at how's the name of that riding? Yellowhead?
For the Conservative Party, it's William Stephenson.
No, I'm talking about the riding itself. It's called Yellowhead riding? Okay,
Yellowhead.
I'm just gonna take a look at the actual distance what it looked like because I have no idea. I know that there were some recent changes that happened like in the last year or so. I know here in Edmonton they split a riding in half. That's called, and now we had Edmonton Northwest now.
Okay.
So I was just gonna share this here. I was just gonna pay attention to the feed from CPAC in case they change their mind with this scrum because that was hilarious. But this is what it looked like. So Yellowhead, the map here, and I'm just going to search for Yellowhead. Oh, that's Yellowhead. So basically, what you have is this guy. Oh my goodness, that's massive riding here.
So probably to drive from, it goes right around Callaway Park, if you can believe.
Oh my God.
So people who are, Calgarians are in the same constituency as people as far north as Grand Cache.
Oh my God, that is massive. I didn't know Edmonton Wetaskiwin this one would include Edmonton. I don't know Wetaskiwin's. Oh, because of Leduc. Gotcha.
Yeah, so Leduc's in the Edmonton Wetaskiwin or the Wetaskiwin one.
Yeah, that's how I see here. Wetaskiwin. Okay. Yeah, my riding is Edmonton Grisba, and I have the Conservatives. We have Karen Diot as Conservatives, and I remember in 2019 that vote split in half between the Conservative vote. Split in half between the PPC and the CPC. Yeah. That's how Blake de Jarlais actually won because of a vote splitting on the Conservative side of things. My assessment of the situation is that we're gonna see a similar pattern with the left vote, meaning that a lot of the voters, at least here in where I am right now, there you see posters from the NDP everywhere, like signs everywhere. But that would depend on the neighborhood you're at. There are some neighborhoods that you see more, carry the odd signs, which are the conservatives. But I haven't seen anything related to the PPC or anything of that nature. But that would depend on where you are. For instance, I know that Edmonton, this one here is very interesting. Edmonton, Millwoods, and Edmonton. Where's Edmonton North Southeast? Edmonton Southeast.
That must be Millwoods.
Yeah,
right?
I'm gonna get another map from Elections Alberta, Elections Canada now. So just to tell people how to go to vote, in case in case you don't know, this is my first time I'm gonna vote federally here in Alberta, which is funny.
When did you move here again, Max?
Quebec.
No, when did you move here?
2022.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was that. Yeah. So if you go to Elections Canada on the website elections.ca, you punch your postal code. So I'm going to punch a random code like G6K or M9L192. I'm just punching numbers here just for the fun of it. And it says Humber Creek, Black Creek. Where did you vote? You can actually see there where your voter locations is. And you can go in there, the address in there. So yeah. Oh, by the way, I was dissecting this history from Rebel News, not Rebel News, but from Kean Baxley about the fact that in Champion, Alberta, you cannot vote, and looks like it is correct. I tried to search by postal code the area codes here for Champion, Alberta, and there's no polling office. You cannot find any address on that location, which means that if you want to vote, you have to go to Lethbridge.
Well, I know in the Yellowhead constituency, or the Yellowhead electoral district, I guess is the proper name. It's so big, they're having to hire 900 people to do the election. They have so many polling booths set up all throughout the electoral district. And they've only been able to find about 500 or 600 people. So they're short about a third of the workers with 11 days to go, and they've got all the training to do.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how the advanced polls are going to work if they don't have staff. I think I'm going to go vote tomorrow. It's funny, there's a hall that is a polling station that's 4 miles away from my house. But I live on the south side of the road. So I can't drive the 4 miles to go vote. I have to drive about 30 miles to Caroline to go vote to my polling station.
Oh, to Caroline, 30 miles. That's huge. When
25 miles.
I remember one time I was in, when I voted last time I voted provincially down east, I was in because I haven't changed my address fully with the election office, I have to drive all the way to my parents' city where they live, which is 200 miles from where I lived, in order to cast my ballot.
Couldn't you just go bring proof of an address?
Yeah. So what happens is that, on my driver's license, this is just me being weird. On my driver's license, I have a PO box. So I don't have my residential address on my driver's license for security purposes. I don't want people to know where I live if they pick up my driver's license.
Right.
So yeah, because right?
Yeah.
So basically what happened was that when I showed up with an ID, the lady over there, she was asking, where do I live? And I basically said I live in this area. So I have to, and all my billings, like my hydro, my TELUS, all those things, they're all tied to my PO box.
Okay.
So they could not determine where I live based on the address that's on my papers, on my bills, anything. So I don't know how I managed to vote in that location, but I'm gonna have a similar situation here in Edmonton. So that's why, like tomorrow, I'm going to the office and I'm gonna check the papers, see if I can go to vote. And so basically, from a geographical standpoint, I'm in Edmonton, Griesbach. For billing purposes, I'm in Mill Woods. And that's funny because Mill Woods is, in fact, the riding. I think I know it. No, gotcha. Edmonton Mill Woods, I believe it's called. That's the old name because now it's called Edmonton Southeast. That is Amarjeet Sohi's riding, the mayor of Edmonton.
And you're voting for him, right?
Of course not. Of course, I want to vote for a guy who raised my tax rate 20%. Come on. Of course, I like being governed. And that's funny because now we start to see some pictures at the rallies and from the Liberals and stuff, and they have those massive, those posters, those signs saying Big Daddy. So they call Mark Carney Big Daddy. Big Daddy. Oh my God, that looks like they like the government so much they want to be, I don't know. Anyways, I sincerely hope that we're going to get rid of this liberal NDP government once and for all because it's done enough damage as it is. And think about my guys and my perspective. I was talking to one of my coworkers at my office, and we're talking about politics, and she told me, hey, I'm going to vote. Hey, Max, I don't want to be rude or something. Why are you going to vote for this combination conservative? Right? Oh, that's funny. And then her mind started to, open up to this. And she's saying, look, I want to buy a house with my boyfriend, my husband, and I have some kids in there, but the situation is so bad because of immigration, out of control immigration, that sort of thing. So a lot of people, at least that I know, when I talk about politics, 8 out of 10, they lean conservative. I was at a gas station in Mill Woods, by the way. Mill Woods, that's for those who don't know where Mill Woods is, that's the Sikh community, the Khalistanian people. They're all gathered in Edmonton. That's Mill Woods in South Bend, like Ellerslie, that sort of thing. That's all there. So I think I was at the gas station, and I was talking with a guy, on a pickup truck, and he was talking about that. He ain't gonna vote Liberal, and so was the cashier. They aren't gonna vote Liberal. When you talk, I was at the grocery store the other day in Glenora, which is like NDP downtown, like NDP town in Edmonton. Was talking with a lady over there, probably in the 70s. Same thing. I'm not gonna vote Liberal. I'm gonna vote. People here are hurt from the last 10 years that we have with the Liberals and the NDP. And that is something that is never discussed in any rallies or anything of that nature. I'm going to be 35 in May. I think that this Liberal government actually took 10 years of my life. And I'm very, very loyally pissed off. Quite frankly, I want those people to be gone. I don't want to ever see them again. I'm genuinely mad.
So your prediction is that Poilievre's going to win? Or do you think Carney's going to?
I will say, prediction-wise, I will say either a minority conservative government.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be my expectation, minority conservative, which is still good. And we'll talk about that specific issue. The Greens were not there, right? They were not in the debate. The reason being is because they wanted to dilute. They're telling their members to not have candidates so they can fully support a progressive candidate like the Liberals or the NDP.
Yeah.
So they're trying to, the Liberals right now, the leftists, the progressives now are trying to consolidate a lot of their voting into the Liberals or the NDP, but most likely the Liberals now, which is a funny history, a funny thing. So my expectation will be that we'll end up with a minority conservative government, because a lot of those people, the moderates right now, who don't follow politics that much, they sort of think that they still looking at the polls and they get discouraged by the polls, and I try to educate them, say, no, the polls are very basically false. But there are some people who are still looking at 338 Canada, and they see the whole country being red. I haven't checked that site ever since I figured out they're a bunch of liars. Well, they get all those data from all those polling companies who are equally fraudulent. So if I go in here and I look at 338 Canada here, right? Like, you see, when you're a conservative voter and you don't follow the politics that much, you tend to get discouraged very effectively, right? Why is that Alberta has 9 Liberals and 1 NDP, right? Where are the other 9s? That's what I mentioned, is that we have here in Alberta, that's what I was saying, is that a lot of the votes for the progressives it's been concentrated with the Liberals right now, regardless if you're NDP or for Liberal. I found surprising that as to why in Edmonton we have so many signs for the NDP.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the signs are for NDP. I barely anyone. All the signs that for the Liberals here in Edmonton are signs that you find on the street, like a campaign, like a volunteer climbing like a sign on the street on a boulevard or North Boulevard, whatever. These are the signs that I see from the Liberals. I don't see Liberal signs at people's doors. That's the NDP.
Well,
So
I've seen one NDP sign in this electoral district. I don't recall seeing any Liberal. I have seen conservative signs, and I don't know if I've seen a PPC sign in this constituency.
At the people's doors, or just at the
Anywhere.
I've
I don't
seen
think I've seen any at anyone's doors, but it's all street corners and other places like that.
I've seen on my way to work, I drive through 3 ridings in Edmonton when I go to my office, and I think I've seen 1 or 2 PPC signs on the street, not on their houses, but I see some conservative signs, and that also, I think it's also a point to discuss, is that at least here in Edmonton, people are not showing up for their signs. I mean, if you're conservative in Edmonton, people tend to be very cautious who is showing their signs, because if you have 10 NDPs and you have 1 conservative, guess what? You become the target, you become the enemy. So I think that depending on the situation, the conservative base in Edmonton is by far more discreet than the NDP. And I know because when I was at the rally in Edmonton, we were like probably 12,000 people there. The scene was full. I was there. I recorded the whole thing on social media. And
I was watching a lot of your live stream.
Oh, thanks. And there's a problem with the internet over there. The internet just died over there. So I have to record it. And then do my video editing. I wanted to see the plat, by the way, but it was like I needed to do my editing.
Well, I was watching you, and then you went inside the building, and I lost you. And then I watched the pleb, and he went inside, and he got cut off. And then he just stayed outside and walked around for the rest of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was there and I recorded. So I have my tripod here, which I still have to this day, sort of like my tripod here. This is tripod number 2, as I call it. to see here. Oh my god.
Hey, well, Max, I got to go get some supper. So
Yeah.
thanks
me
for live
too.
streaming and good chatting with you.
Oh, that's good. That's fantastic. Thanks for stopping by. That's awesome. Having some
Okay,
people
take care.
in there. Awesome. Thanks. So yeah, that's what was said from one of my friends here came here, Tim Hoven. So yeah, so this is what it looks like from Canada 338. So basically 338. If you were on the stream like earlier this morning, earlier this afternoon, there was this guy called Eric Grenier. He actually he's one of the owners of. He actually sort of owns the website here, right here. So basically what's going to happen, let's see how it's going to go for Edmonton. I sincerely believe that we're going to have some NDP MLAs there, but most of the conservatives, most of the support is going to be concentrated within the Liberal Party. That's my understanding. So let's take a look at the feed from CPAC. So have they changed to the have they're doing the scrums yet? I'm just gonna double recheck here because that's very interesting there.
100,000 new jobs that come with this, and it's the combination. It's saying yes, the government's going to build jobs or build houses, but also like we do with healthcare funding and like we do with social transfers, there's going to be conditions on the money that gets transferred. So we also, even New Democrats are saying to the provinces and to municipalities, to get this extra $16 billion, get a piece of that, you need to get rid of the barriers to building. You need to fast track the ability for people to get zoning changes, and all of those things need to come. And that's the difference. It's not just the government saying we're going to build houses. Yes, the government's going to do some of that under an NDP government, but the plan also is to help make it so the private sector is able to build those houses they want to build more quickly.
Laurie, did you want to say anything about the housing and where it fits?
Oh
into
yeah,
this
so I
election
have a
It's one
confirmation.
of those issues
This
that I
is
think
from the
for a
Toronto
while, at the
Star,
beginning of the
actually.
campaign, when the hyper-focus
Toronto
was really
Star.
on Trump and the
Toronto Star, basically saying that the leaders have changed. So basically, federal leaders to review Carney, Poliver Singh, post-debate scrums canceled 2 minutes ago. 2 minutes ago. So basically what they're saying is that the scrum has been canceled. That's what it means. So yeah, so this is where we are right now. So basically it means that the scrum has been canceled. Interesting. So I hope you guys are doing great. That was a long time, almost 4 hours rolling this thing. I had a good time talking to you guys and reacting and being a crazy guy than I am, which is awesome. And I would say that for now, the winner of this debate is clearly Poilievre. The loser is still Jack Meat because he's Jack Meat. But also, I will strongly recommend people to go to vote this coming election, because there's a lot of people who say, politics doesn't matter. It's all the same people, yada, 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 yada. I heard shit. I heard everything. Okay. But it's not what matters is right now is what matters is how, because we need to get smarter than the left. Okay. That the left is trying to put their votes in the left, in the liberals. So we have to outsmart them and we have to outnumber. And there are some writings that are, despite a conservative majority or consider a conservative advance, we still have some people who are basically, there's still some writings that are leaning towards liberals, especially in the cities, right? Like I'm basically in Alberta, right? But you might have other cities, like I know that Edmonton is pretty solid. If you go to Toronto, that's going to be more severe as well too. So I'm just going to see how the reactions are on social media, just for the fun of it. Petition to turn Jack Meat's mic. Yeah, petition to turn off Jack Meat's mic. That is, yeah. Turn the mic on Jack Meat. That's fantastic. Yeah, petition to turn Jack Meat's mic. He was abrasive. He hasn't changed his tune. He was very like a kid talking to his parents who wasn't want to give his lollipop, you know. Peter Poliver did destroy Mark Carney security clearance question. Obviously, why is Jack Meat interrupting? No, stop. Yeah, why is it Jack Meat? Let the kids talk. Let the adults talk. Do the talking. I don't live, but I can't vote for Blush. I don't think. Well, technically, because it's a federal party, if you have a candidate in Ontario for the Bloc, you can still vote for him. But that will elude the concept of the Bloc, right? Pierre Polivier wants to send for nature again for the game going. Yeah, that's a biggie. That is going to convince some people not to vote for the liberals, for the conservatives as well. This whole Ukraine bullshit needs to end. Nobody cares. I mean, when he was talking about Ukraine and stuff, I'm like, most people I know on the conservative base do not care about Ukraine. They want this thing to end. They talking against was supposed to debate to the Security Council, sir. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a shame, right? They want themselves to hide, right? And all the memes. I want to see what's going to happen with everything that's happened. So I want to see the debate and what's going to happen for tomorrow. I think overall, I will say that overall the debate was, I think, better. I think that the debate today was fairly better than yesterday. I was thinking that Stephen will be the moderator, will be leaning on soft questions. I was surprised for him to be fairly objective. I was very satisfied with how he handled things, which is good. There were some couple of questions that wasn't 100% sure, but overall I was very satisfied, which is awesome. So, and he asked the questions. He wasn't talking about immigration, but they have more questions. I gotta have to see the screenshot from the French version and the English version. The questions are different on the French side and on the English side of things. So I had to double check my notes, but there were significant. The formula for this particular debate was very different, and I like it as well too. Very well done. Jack Meat is the biggest loser for sure. Kenny Helder, the guy, he was being a child for the rest of the day. Mark Carney, there are some questions with Mark Carney. Mark Carney, he wasn't like feeling well with some questions. You can definitely see that he was borderline irritated, right? And as well as for Yves Francois was, the fact that he was using French to talk with those people in some words was kind of like, if you're an English speaker, that's kind of disrespectful to some degree, right? Poliver was good, but I was expecting him to be more incisive and more like a bulldog. I was expecting that from him. But they have 4 candidates in a 2-hour span, so I think that's probably what happened with them. So they couldn't ask. So basically, they have to allocate like 30 minutes of time for each candidate. So yeah. So they have no scrums for today. So I just want to thank you for being with us tonight, and hope that you guys go up and vote. I'm going to try to recall some of the events that for early candidates as well, not just for the, I just wanted to transfer the debate, but I'm going to try to record some events live for other candidates as well, because there are 30 parties involved. And as Tim was talking about, there's this party, I think it's called the, I have to double check my notes there. It's another political party that's been integrated. They're like fighting with the conservatives as well too. So yeah, that was amazing, and I'm hoping to see you guys in vote. And also one thing about voting in particular, do not vote in advance polling because of fraud. Go and vote the same day in advance. So you have from 8 to 9 in the morning p.m. or something to vote. My assessment is for you to guys vote the same date and not doing advance polling. The reason being is that during advance polling, there's a high probability of fraud. And if you see irregularities, document them on social media, document it against you have to put everything on paper, because I don't know what's going to happen with this election. What will happen in Southern Alberta is assigned. So I was talking with Tim today, that's also assigned to that in certain areas where there's very little population density, there might be an issue, but let's see how it goes. So I'm going to vote for sure, that's for sure, but I'm going to vote in election day. So thanks for coming out today, and hope to see you there, and hope that you're satisfied with I was very satisfied with the debate for now. Bye.